so you just walk over. If it's snowing or it's bad weather, you're like, oh, I'll just sleep in a little more, catch up a little later. When the hotel's like minibar stocked with coconut water, and they've got like trail mix, and they got these kind of more health conscious sort of snacks. It's nice.
It's nice.
Working out these days, so I want to go to the beach. So I'll rip down to like.
Yo, what's up?
It's my quick getaway. I usually stay at this hotel called the Cave. The best part about it is that the food's amazing, and they have this epic pool, and there's a lake out front, so you actually can surf out front of the hotel. I like to move in.
There's undoubtedly a time when Antarctica was lush and green. The question is, was it lush and green during the lifetime of the Antarctica? Yes. He did know that other pyramids had their entrance in the north face, and that
about to get into some sniping.
When you enter the Great Pyramid, it's called Mamun's Hole. I'm doing a debate with a leading archaeologist on the Joe Rogan experience.
What up, Knox?
It's a very good thing that this is happening. The mainstream has normally said, "Now we don't want to talk to you guys. You're Looney Tunes. We're not going to give you a platform." But in this case, it is happening. I have things to say, and I'm going to preserve my ammunition for this. It's on psychedelics, particularly on ayahuasca. I have felt the presence of the entity that I call Mother Ayahuasca. She took the form of an enormous serpent who wrapped herself around my body. Felt enormously comforted. And again, like
how you been doing?
I've had many times, is that you won't be good at giving love to others if you don't love yourself.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Flagrant. And today we're incredibly excited because we're sitting down with the Godfather, okay? The Godfather of my YouTube rabbit holes for the last maybe 5 years, 6 years, years beyond that. We have Grant Henry. No, thank you. I actually went to see the pyramids because of you.
I'm very glad to hear that.
It was a mind
chilling with your girl. That's what's up.
This is, God, what exactly was this? 4 years ago?
You pulled nothing good today?
It kind of makes things like a little murky, maybe 3, but it's pretty been.
Well, the Giza Plateau and those 3 massive pyramids and the satellite pyramids are an amazing place. So the Great Pyramid itself is totally, utterly unique, extraordinary, and special. I have a long relationship with the Great Pyramid.
I saw this unbelievable.
Oh, you ain't got no MT, huh?
You going to the top. I tried to get.
Yeah, you did with your MT, man.
By myself, and I was there with my.
You was running your MT up.
Get arrested and have her just be alone in Egypt, and so I put it out and I went back down.
Probably a wise decision because you could have spent some year or 2 in jail.
Wow.
Really? Oh yeah.
Wow. Did you get locked up when you went up top?
No. The illegal climbs that we did. The first illegal climb involved 4 o'clock in the morning and a lot of bribery.
And how much was it back in the day to get?
I'm trying. This was like 1996. Might even have been earlier. It might have been 1994. And we had.
Oh, you bought Wembley.
Who made
oh yeah, well you good, shit.
Around the pyramid. We paid him money. I forget the exact amount.
Season 8 coming out. You just gotta get on grind.
When we got to the base of the pyramid, we had to walk all the way around it, which is a considerable distance, 750 feet along each side. We had to walk all the way around it, and then we had to add more money to each of the guards at the 4 corners. And then we went up, and my advice to anybody is...
Let's see if I can get something going.
Which is pretty much impossible these days, either legally or illegally, to go up the southwest corner. Because the southwest corner is pretty intact, it's pretty much a straight line. You can follow it all the way to the
what is the entrance?
Actually, let's see what's in these dark matters. Everything going down. Everything dropping. Market finna crash down.
It's the opposite side to the Great Sphinx. And
then nobody's looking at you.
Well, it's good for that.
So they're all facing east. But
then after we were a few courses up, and another guard turned up with a shotgun. I don't think it would have reached us from that distance, but there were threats, and we had to promise to pay him more.
Yeah.
So he points the shotgun.
That would really be nice to get all the house on him.
We'll pay you, and he's like, okay, well, now you can.
Basically, yeah, we did a deal that we'd pay him when we came down. And
did you?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. It's good to keep your promises. And then we climbed.
Do you remember how much you paid?
I actually don't. But back in the day, I guess it was probably 1994. It would have seemed a lot to me at that time. But it also seemed worth it. It was a fantastic adventure. Starting in the dark or just the beginning of dawn light, and climbing up to the top. Taking shelter at various points behind bits as other guards appeared, finally getting to the top, and then the light coming up at just this majestic view.
So sunrise at the top.
Yeah, sunrise on top of the Great Pyramid, and the second pyramid, to your south. It's just an amazing thing to see, and it's an amazing experience. I would regard it as one of the
You gonna
best
sell them?
experiences of my life. I did have one other illegal climb, which was just fortunate. It was following the holiday of Ramadan. They have a thing called the Eid, which is a celebration, and I would guess there were 30,000 Kairenes on the Giza Plateau having picnics, and they just decided they were going to climb the Great Pyramid. Not all 30,000, but several hundred of them. And we just joined them, me and Santa, and we climbed with them. And that actually is one of the moments when I realized how difficult the Great Pyramid must have been to build. Because the biggest danger climbing up there with several hundred people
might as well.
Other people.
It's a lot of new stuff going to come out, so.
Imagine managing that with all the blocks.
With all the blocks and supposedly a huge workforce and ramps or whatever the Egyptologists imagine.
You get that free curry tomorrow.
Knows how it was done. For me, that was the biggest risk was people bumping into you,
all right,
going around you as you're climbing up. But again, we got to the top, and then I had 3 legal climbs in those days when those were allowed, doing various filming projects back in.
When do you see your last name inscribed in the block? This is an incredible story.
Yes, it is. I think it was on the 2nd or 3rd climb. I'm not absolutely sure. I think it may have been one of the legal time climbs because it was daylight and we were relaxed, as we were not when there were hundreds of other people up there with us. So I think it may have been on one of the legal climbs. And there I did see, and it's on the south side of the Great Pyramid, the southeast side, overlooking the Boat Museum, which used to be there. And there was the name initial P and Hancock. And at that time, there was a date decided, and that date, if I recall correctly, was the 5th of April, 1916. Oddly enough, that
1916.
Yeah. Now my granddad was a chaplain with British forces in Egypt in the First World War. So I have to consider the possibility that it could be him. He was called Philip Hancock.
Oh wow.
But I couldn't absolutely guarantee that, and I was able to confirm it by finding my grandfather's diaries, which were little diaries about that high, tiny little writing in them.
Free Steph Curry tomorrow.
On that date, there was a single line which said, "Climb Great Pyramid today."
Wow.
And then I found
it was dated 1916.
Yeah. And then I found his biography, which was passed down to me by my dad. And he also talks about his climb of the Great Pyramid in that, although in very spare terms, doesn't say that much about it.
I know it's not that much that he put in there, but did he say there was any security? Was
at
this
that time,
free range?
Totally,
Sand is covering the bottom?
Totally free range. And I think the sand was definitely cleared away at that time. But anybody could climb the Great Pyramid. And there was, in fact, the guy who organized our first illegal climb, and I think I can say this safely because he passed on to the next world, was a guy known locally as Champion. And he was called Champion because he was the champion runner of the Great Pyramid. He could run all the way to the top of the Great Pyramid. There were times people did that, and it was totally legal, and nobody objected to it at all. And that went on, I think, certainly through the sort of 70s and 80s. But by the time my wife Santa and I climbed 1994 for the first time, I'm pretty sure it was 94. It had become illegal, and now it's totally illegal. It's completely banned.
Yeah.
And I doubt even if a film crew would get permission to climb the Great Pyramid now.
Even like that.
Yeah. They're very careful about it. But, and one of the reasons why they're careful about it is that every year at least one person dies trying to climb the Great Pyramid. People still try to climb it illegally. And as you can imagine from the bit of the climb you did, you're looking at a 52-degree slope.
Yeah.
So once you get up 100, 150 feet above the ground, if you lose it and fall, you're going to go all the way to the bottom, and it's over.
In the beginning, you have a lot of confidence. The first few tiers of rocks seem pretty easy.
They're not too bad.
But I can imagine you're halfway up, you start looking down, and it is over if you slip.
Totally over. And also, the course sizes vary. Some of them are really no more than sort of hip high. Some of the courses are chest high, so you've got to.
Courses are the blocks.
Yeah, I mean it's laid out in layers. So, it looks like a step pyramid now. It wasn't before. Yeah. In ancient times, it was covered with facing stones.
And you can see some of the facing stones.
Some of the facing stones are still there down at the bottom of the Great Pyramid. They give you a sense of how beautiful they were and how magnificently well it was made. But the theory is, there's no absolute proof of this, that they came off during an earthquake in 1301. And at that time, it's likely that that's when the Great Pyramid lost its summit. The Great Pyramid stands at the moment about 450, maybe 455 feet tall, but its original height was 481 feet tall. And you can calculate that from just pursuing the slope of the sides of it.
30 feet came off?
Yeah. So there's a flat platform, or rather even a stepped platform on top of the Great Pyramid with one level and then one level, another level. But the calculation is very simple. You just pursue those side lengths up to where they would meet, and according to that calculation, the Great Pyramid was originally 481 feet tall.
Wow.
So it lost about 30 feet. The question is, was it in fact ever completed? We don't know that for sure.
Right.
But the general view is that earthquake brought part of the top of the Great Pyramid tumbling down as well and knocked off the facing stones. And then, of course, it was used as a quarry.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Because it's very, very, very useful to have all this nice cut stone lying around. And a lot of those facing stones were taken away.
Okay, so after inspiring probably tens of thousands of people to go to the pyramids like myself, you managed to get banned from Egypt?
Yes.
Is it a real full-time ban?
This is not clear to me. We
gotta sneak in, Greg.
In my
we gotta do one more time.
There's a champion junior that will pick and bride.
Dude, we need a carved G Hancock right next to me.
I think this would be good. It's very difficult to do that with a film crew, however.
That's a very good
This is when it happened. Is that my Netflix series Age of Apocalypse, we wanted to film an episode in Egypt, which you would have thought the Egyptian authorities would welcome, but when they asked who is presenting the show, and we said that Graham Hancock is presenting the show, they said absolutely no way, and they would not grant filming permission.
Let me tell you something. The Four Seasons in Cairo wants you to do an episode of that. I promise.
Yeah, it would bring a lot of interest and a lot of people, but there's a rigid, fixed view amongst Egyptologists about the prehistory and the history of ancient Egypt.
So questioning that
gets you banned. Okay?
Yes.
That's the first line of defense against a critical and alternative point of view.
Yes.
Is simply to deny them access to the site. And I felt since that happened that I've had my left arm cut off.
Yeah.
Because Egypt has been very central and very important to my work.
Yeah.
I hope eventually I will get back in. Could I go as a tourist? Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
Announcements. I'm coming to the motherland. Play the bagpipes, Miles. That's right. The Life Tour is coming to Glasgow. Okay? Scotland, we're showing up. We're also coming to Dublin. Ireland, we're showing up. And you know what? We're not going to leave the north of England out. Manchester, we are pulling up. Is it Man City or Man United? We're going to see who's in the crowd. And whoever shows up,
I need a yow.
that's who I'm rooting for the rest of my existence. So make sure you make the right decision, red or blue, because that's who I'm rocking with afterwards. Okay? Those tickets are up for pre-sale right now. Code is Andrew. Get them fast. TheAndrewSchultz.com. Can't wait to see you all. Also, thank you so much, everybody who sold out the Royal Albert Hall show in London. We did that in a few hours. That was unbelievable. Thank you so much. Cannot wait to do the show in that remarkable venue. TheAndrewSchultz.com for all the tickets. Go get them immediately before they're gone. Can't wait to see you all. Peace.
Did the legal climbs, were they aware you had did the 2 illegal climbs previously?
Yeah.
Oh, and they still gave you permission?
Yeah. Oh, wow. At that time, everything was much less sensitive. Everything was much less sensitive until 2015, when I had the beginnings of a public debate with who is regarded as the leading Egyptologist, Zahi Hawass. And unfortunately, in that debate, Zahi, it's actually on YouTube, bits of it, because there was a member of the audience present. Zahi massively lost his temper and stormed out. And then
So you won.
And then I don't know. The debate didn't happen. Then I gave a talk. He sat sulking outside. Then he came back, gave his talk. Then the audience asked questions. And again, bits of this were filmed. And one of the audience asked him if he knew about a site called Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is probably the most important archaeological site in the world at the moment. And Zahi said that he didn't know anything about it at all, and that was on camera. So unfortunately, the man is actually enormously knowledgeable about ancient Egypt, but unfortunately he came across looking not very good. And ever since then, my relationship with him, which has been okay, has been extremely negative. And when the Egyptian government are approached for filming permission, which these days is done through the Tourism and Antiquities Commission, when they're approached for filming permission, Zahi's the guy they go to and say, is it okay for these people to come in and film? So
if you beef with him, then it's not going to happen.
It's difficult.
And I understand the defensiveness, because when you wrap your cultural identity around something or creating something as majestic as the pyramids, feeling as if that's like being ripped away from you can really make you feel as if your identity is being taken.
Yeah, and to be clear, I would never wish to divorce the Great Pyramids from the ancient Egyptians. There are a lot of wrong ideas about what I think about this.
Please clarify, because I'm lazy.
The clarification is this: it's complicated, all right. But inside the Great Pyramid, there are 4 very narrow shafts which point up at the sky. 2 of them point north and south from the so-called King's Chamber. I say so-called because no burial was ever found in it. Yeah. There was a sarcophagus found in it. It's still there, but you had to build the chamber around it. They couldn't bring it up in a funeral ceremony. It's too big to get through the corridor. So 2 shafts point north and south, and they do actually exit on the outside of the body of the pyramid. Back in the 19th century, explorers climbed up there. There they go. You're looking at the King's Chamber South, King's Chamber North, and both of those, you could roll cannonballs down them from the outside, and they would turn up in the King's Chamber. But the shafts of the Queen's Chamber are more complicated. Until, I believe it was 1872, nobody knew they were there. The inner wall of the Queen's Chamber was completely smooth, but there was actually he was a Freemason called John Wayneman Dixon, who had explored the King's Chamber, and he figured, look, there's shafts in the King's Chamber, maybe there's shafts in the Queen's Chamber. And he went around knocking on the walls, and he found 2 hollow points, and he broke those through. You could do that in 1872. And lo and behold, they opened up into these 2 shafts, which go horizontally at first, and then point up at the sky. They do not exit on the outside of the pyramid. They're very, very mysterious. The thing is that the angle of those shafts points to significant stars, 4 significant stars, in the period in which Egyptologists believe that the Great Pyramid was built. Archaeoastronomy, which is a universal language, one of them is the lowest of the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And the constellation of Orion was identified with the god Osiris. He was seen as the celestial image of the god Osiris. So having a shaft pointing at the belt of Orion or Osiris makes perfect sense. And others pointed 2 of the 2 northern shafts pointed 2 of the circumpolar stars. I forget exactly which ones now. And again, they pointed them in the era when the pyramids were built, because the positions of stars in the sky change very slowly down the ages. So from an astronomical point of view, it would be absurd to disconnect the Great Pyramid entirely from the ancient Egyptians. But there's a problem. And that problem is the ground pattern of the 3 Great Pyramids and their relationship to, it's not an accident that Orion's belt has 3 stars and that the Great Pyramids are 3. And that they are positioned on the ground, anybody can see it, in a pattern that looks very similar to Orion's belt. It's like a painter. He's got his easel in front of him and his canvas, and he's looking up at the sky, and he's painting on the canvas the 3 stars of Orion's belt, and then he lowers that canvas down to his feet, and that's what you have on the ground at Giza.
It's that perfect.
It's that perfect, but it's only perfect 12,500 years ago, roughly 12,000. Let's say a round figure, 12,000 years ago.
Yeah.
These changes in the sky are actually caused by a motion of the Earth itself. It's a very slow motion. It's a cycle. It takes 25,920 years to complete. The pattern of the stars on the ground and the stars in the sky and the pyramids on the ground and their relationship to the Nile River and the Milky Way blocks perfectly
At 12,000.
About 12,000 years ago. Not on a single day, but over an epoch of about 1,000 years, and then it gradually shifts out, because this is a very, very slow change that takes place. So you have the ground saying 12,500 years ago, and you have the shaft saying 4,500 years ago.
So one might assume that those shafts were maybe carved out at a different time, potentially?
Well, yes. The way I look at it is, I think the site was sacred more than 12,000 years ago.
Right.
I think ground platforms were created there. It's important to remember the Great Pyramid is already built around a natural hill. The first 30 feet inside the Great Pyramid is a natural mound, and there are traditions in ancient Egypt of the primeval mound. And if you enter the Great Pyramid, and you may or may not have been able to do that with your wizard, did you get down to the subterranean chamber?
I think everything was. Oh no, we did. The subterranean was much bigger.
Was it a very rough-hewn chamber cut out of solid bedrock, or was it a built chamber?
There's the built one that we saw. Is it called a sarcophagus? No.
Yes, that's the King's Chamber.
We went to the King's Chamber, but I believe that there was another one. I can't remember.
You can see that on the screen there. You can see the subterranean chamber. You see the entrance in the north face.
Yep. No, I don't think we went that far.
And then we went. Okay.
Yeah.
It's about 100 feet vertically beneath the base of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And it's about 600 feet beneath the apex of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And it's cut out of solid bedrock. And my view is, and it's only a theory, and I don't claim that I'm correct, it's just put this forward for thought, is that the original sacred site on the Giza Plateau was that natural primeval mound beneath which the ancients hewed out this enormous subterranean chamber, which is it looks like a rough, unfinished chamber, but it has curious acoustic effects, which are in themselves very interesting. And then
something that people talk about.
It's an amazing place to be, and actually you get a resonance. We tried an experiment with an opera singer up in the King's Chamber. You could hear her down in the subterranean chamber, which is quite remarkable in itself. But I think that was the original sacred site. I think there was the ground platforms were put in position, and I think the ancient Egyptians finished off the job in a brilliant way. Overbuilding and commemorating and memorizing a site of enormous significance and importance to them.
Sorry, when you say finished off, I'm dumb, so I'm going to ask dumb questions. When you say finished off, what exactly do you theorize?
I think the vast majority of the great pyramids as we see them today were the work of the ancient Egyptians.
Okay, got it.
I think they were building on a prehistoric foundation.
Okay.
And it had been sacred for
So your point is not to take away from what ancient. You think they built most of it. You think we're just discounting that there might have been people here 12,500 years ago that also built it.
Correct, because that runs against the archaeological mainstream, and this is where you get into issues of geology and the issue of the Great Sphinx. Because I think, again, it's just my theory. I don't claim I'm 100% right, and everybody's got to listen to me and tell the Egyptologists to go away. Just my view is that on the Giza Plateau were the three massive ground platforms of the three Great Pyramids, the subterranean chamber beneath what is now the Great Pyramid, the megalithic temples, the so-called Bali Temple and the Sphinx Temple right beside the Sphinx, and the so-called mortuary temples. These are all megalithic that stand beside the Great Pyramids.
Those are the three little ones that are next to them?
No, those are the so-called satellite pyramids. Okay. But there are megalithic temples where, when I say megalithic, you're looking at structures where the largest single block weighs 200 tons. These are gigantic blocks of stone. But of particular interest, right in front of the Great Sphinx is an almost completely ruined one, and then just to the south of the Great Sphinx is a rather intact one called the Vali Temple. And this temple bears evidence of being built in two stages. Because when you look at it, you see that its core is made of enormous limestone blocks in the range of 50 to 100 tons each, maybe more.
You can bring this up, Mark?
In the one on the left, you can see the limestone blocks up at the top. That's the original structure. And I and my colleagues, and particularly Professor Robert Schock from Boston University, who is a geologist, are of the view that the ancient Egyptians renovated a far more ancient limestone temple. So you can see the weathering on the limestone temple, and then you can see the granite blocks that were added by the ancient Egyptians. And the puzzle of those blocks is that they are carefully cut to fit around the weathering in the limestone core blocks. So they were respecting those limestone core blocks. They weren't demolishing them. It would be really easy just to cut them flat, you know, if you're going to do this, but no, they didn't. They carefully cut each granite block so it would fit around the weathering pattern.
We'd only do that if you thought that a place was sacred.
You felt it was special, and you were trying to preserve it. Likewise, the Sphinx. Again, I need to pay tribute to others. I need to pay tribute to John Anthony West, who was an independent Egyptologist, brilliant man, dear friend of mine.
Rest in peace, right?
Yes, passed away in 2018. He used to call academics quackademics. He was a master of vitriol. And he was the first to draw attention to the possibility that the Great Sphinx may also be a multi-phase monument, not just a monument built in the 4th dynasty, 2500 BC or whatever. He pointed out that there seemed to be very strange erosion patterns there. Harder to see on the
fissures. There might be on the wall,
but on the surrounding trench, they're much easier to see. And then he brought Professor Robert Schoch from Boston University, who is a geologist, and Schoch agreed that what we're looking at here in the fissures around the side of the Great Sphinx, and to some extent on the body of the Sphinx, is what's called precipitation-induced weathering. It's not a flood. It's weathering that's caused by exposure to a very long period of heavy rainfall.
Right.
And then you have to get into paleoclimatology. When did it rain on the Giza Plateau enough to cause this level of exposure and weathering? You can see the outer trench. The Great Sphinx is cut out of solid bedrock. They created a trench around its body, and the core body was left in place. I and my colleagues think that core body goes back 12,000 plus years. It was originally in the form entirely of a lion with a massive leonine head. But then, by the time that the dynastic period of ancient Egypt came along, the Great Sphinx was very damaged, particularly its head, jutting up above the plateau. And we suggest that at that time, the head of the Great Sphinx was recarved into a human head wearing a classic Nemes headdress of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh.
Can you bring up quickly the Sphinx that is covered up to its neck in sand? So this is what the ancient Egyptians probably were looking at.
Yeah, right? they were looking at a monument cover. Yeah, I mean, this is there's many times during its history when that's all there was. You know, that was the bit that got damaged, and we think back 4,500 years ago, 2,500 BC, it was like that then too, but it was a lion head, and it was very damaged, and they felt they're going to recarve it into a human head, and it is out of proportion with the rest of the body.
Which again does give credit to the Egyptians. I'm just trying to cozy up to the Egyptian government here.
We want you back in.
Also, the Hebrews are okay with this?
I think the ancient Egyptians massively venerated this site from the beginning. It was the place of the beginning. It was the place of the first time. A time that they called Tepe. And I think their project was to honor and memorialize it. And then this is where we get into spooky areas which the Egyptologists don't like, which is I'm suggesting that a body of knowledge was carried down within ancient Egyptian culture, and that a certain moment came when it was decided to turn the Giza Plateau back on again, and that body of knowledge was manifested in the construction of the Great Pyramids. It's very peculiar that the quality of workmanship on the Great Pyramid, and indeed on the other two pyramids of Giza, is extremely high. But go a generation later, 2 generations later, to the 5th dynasty, go to the Pyramid of Unas at Saqqara, where the so-called pyramid texts are inscribed inside the so-called tomb chamber. And that pyramid, the exterior of it is a mess. It's very poorly built, it's very poorly constructed. You know, you look at it, it just looks like a heap of stones. Whereas the Great Pyramid today is still a majestic structure. So it's as though they put everything they had into the
try to replicate it, but they just
try to replicate. And then a generation or two later, they could. That's the Pyramid of Unas.
You know? What if it's just like the Knicks, where like the father did a really good job, and then the next generation has really fucked the whole thing up?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but it's
spoiler shots on my team. Like
it's a fair point. You know, I mean, different societies go up and down, and that can happen. But that's my view also with the idea of a lost civilization, that we can have an apex and they can fall into a slump and they can come out again. But is knowledge preserved and passed down through the ages? Yes, I think it is.
Now, why wouldn't the people in the Nile Valley at that time, 12,000 years ago, also not be Egyptian? Like, could they still be ethnically Egyptian at that time?
Well, I think in a way, I'm actually deeply uninterested in ethnic matters. when I come to relate to and evaluate a fellow human being or a culture, I'm interested in the ideas that those people have. I'm not interested in their genes. I think actually genes are vastly overrated. They're the least important aspect of a human being. They've been blown up into huge importance in our culture today, but I think skin color, genes, ethnicity, none of these things really matter. Human beings are the same all over the world. It's been my privilege to travel the world intensely for the best part of 40 years. And whether I go to the remotest village in the remotest corner of the Amazon, or whether I find myself in New York City, once I get down to talking face to face with a fellow human being, they're just a fellow human being, just like me, and they have the same hopes, the same dreams, the same fears as every other human being. So I think we make too many divisions. I love cultural differences. Cultural differences are great. Differences in ideas are great, but genetic differences are trivial in my view. And the things that divide us as human beings are far less important than the things that unite us as human beings. I think maybe it's high time we recognize that. So whether the modern Egyptians are ethnically connected in any close way to the ancient Egyptians is a matter that I regard as fundamentally unimportant. The modern Egyptians also honor and respect the Great Pyramids and ancient Egyptian culture, and that's what matters to me.
I'm curious, picking back on that, like, how do you feel about the criticism that you got some people saying you're racist after the Netflix documentary?
Well, that criticism was
because that's why we brought you on. We're like, we hope you're racist. We hope.
You kind of let me down with this whole everyone's equal talk.
That was interesting. The subject of race is never mentioned in my Netflix series, Ancient Apocalypse. It's never mentioned at all. But when the Society for American Archaeologists wrote an open letter to Netflix demanding that my documentary series be reclassified as science fiction, they accused me of spreading racism, white supremacy, misogyny, and anti-Semitism. None of these issues are ever mentioned in the series.
Wait, what was misogynist?
Yeah.
I don't know, and what, for that matter, was anti-Semitic. It's and what was racist, since race is never mentioned. But what these labels are very useful for, if you shout them loudly enough, and if your friends in the media see a nice story here and pick them up and multiply it, what they're very useful for is turning people off the work of an opponent.
Yes.
And that was clearly what went on here.
You're radioactive. I don't even have to debate you because you're radioactive.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's fundamentally what went on. Yeah. Now, what is the reason for what was the possible? They had no justification for any of the others, but what was the reason for saying that I was spreading racism and white supremacy? It's because in a number of my earlier books, I reported indigenous myths and traditions, particularly from South America and from Mexico, which in some cases referred to a white-skinned, bearded stranger and his companions who came after a time of darkness, after a great cataclysm, bringing knowledge and teaching knowledge to the inhabitants of the country. Now, that is not me saying that. That is indigenous traditions. The view of archaeologists today is that many of those traditions were simply made up by the Spanish conquistadors. I don't think that's true. There are many other archaeologists who don't agree with that and think that they are true and genuine indigenous traditions and should be rightly reported as such. Whether we're referring to Quetzalcoatl in Mexico or to Viracocha in the Andes. These traditions, it's a pan-American myth, and they're not only found in the Americas, but all over the world. They don't always refer to a person as white-skinned. You know, the emphasis that's put on skin color today is really recent in human history. It's a few hundred years old. Did the issue of white skin or black skin carry the same resonance 12,000 years ago that it carries today? I somehow doubt it. I doubt it very much. I don't see why it should, because the abuses of human rights that were carried out in the name of color are recent developments. They're not ancient developments, you know, and therefore
Recent in the scale of human history.
Recent in the scale of human history. Let's say the last 500 or 600 years, something like that. They weren't really there. They weren't really there before that. But it's a huge distraction from the major issue. They also refer to these individuals as being bearded. often referred to there being 7 of them. In ancient Mesopotamia, they're called the 7 sages. In ancient Egypt, at the Temple of Horus at Edfu, they are also referred to as the 7 sages. In ancient India, it's Manu and the seven sages who appear after the flood, trying to restore the knowledge that was lost during the time of the flood. These are indigenous traditions.
Same story, different parts of the world.
Same story, different parts of the world. It's one of the things that interests me about it. What interests me about it least of all is the issue of skin color. What interests me about it most of all is the issue that there seems to be a memory of a cataclysm after which a group of people tried to preserve knowledge from before the cataclysm.
Snow White myth?
I'm not sure.
She falls asleep, the 7 dwarfs, or the 7 sages, they come wake her up with the wisdom of a guy should make out with you when you're passed out.
I need to reread the Snow White.
There might be something there.
Well, no, because myths, myths are the memory bank of our species.
This is what I loved about the Netflix special. Treating the myths as a way of passing on true information.
Yes.
And, and taking them seriously, not looking at them as figments of imagination.
Yeah.
If we were to pass on data and fact, it's way more digestible in the form of story. We memorize stories.
If you wish to pass information to a distant future, if you wish it to be preserved, you wouldn't be smart to just write it down. How can we know that our script is going to be readable by any other culture? Let's say 10,000 years in the future. Will anybody be able to read the English language? Who knows? I have no idea. It's fragile. An example I often give is the Indus Valley civilization in Pakistan and India. The Indus Valley civilization, nobody actually knew that it existed until it was accidentally discovered while a railway was being built through a site now called Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan. And then they found that there were these actually very, very sophisticated, very complex mud brick structures on a very large scale. Then they began to look at it. Then they found that this culture had a language, a fully developed written script. It's about 5,000 years old, but there isn't a single Rosetta Stone that enables us to translate that script into any more recent language. So we can't read that script. The script exists, but we can't read it. So there could be all kinds of information in that script, which tells all kinds of things about our past, but it's not readable.
And how long ago were they thriving?
5,000 years ago.
Wow.
One of the interesting things in the Indus Valley civilization is that there is a particular seal that has survived, a seal that would have been used to stamp an imprint onto cloth or something like that. It's called the Pasupati seal, and it shows a figure which is recognizable as the god Shiva, who's of course an important deity in Indian culture to this day and in the Vedas, and it shows that individual seated in what you'll see is that underneath, the way his feet are organized is that his heels are pointed forwards. This is a really difficult yoga position. To sit like that and have your heels pointed forward, you've got to kind of almost disjoint your legs in order to do that. Okay? And the problem with that is that it's an advanced yoga position. It's found in a seal that's 5,000 years old. We have to ask ourselves how many thousands of years before that was yoga being developed.
Shit.
You know, again, there's a hint of a lost human culture in this. The posture is called Mula Bandhasana. I certainly can't do it.
Unbelievable. Because what do we date modern Indian civilization back to? Is it 5,000 years ago?
The Indus 4,000.
Yeah, since the discovery of the Indus Valley civilization, you know, we have to accept that civilization in India is at least 5,000 years old. The largely and correctly discredited notion of an Aryan invasion of India needs to be abandoned as well. Yes, there were multiple cultures moving back and forwards, but Indian culture is extremely ancient.
5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
In Indus Valley, that's like a thing you'll learn about in textbooks.
Yeah, you learn about it now.
Accept it, yeah.
But what most people don't realize was nobody knew it even existed. It was a lost civilization.
And the language is completely independent. There's no connectivity to anything.
Nobody can connect it to anything. We don't know what it was. There's some suggestion that it may have been Dravidian peoples, the peoples who are now found primarily in southern India, the Tamils,
Okay, yeah.
As a matter of fact, my wife is Tamil.
Gotcha.
And that's been very helpful to us when we've been researching in southern India. We did a lot of diving in southern. My wife is a photographer and a diver, as I am, and we did a lot of diving in southern India. So it was great to be able to talk, for her to be able to talk in their own language to Tamil fishermen and Tamil divers, and see if they'd seen any weird stuff underwater, which they certainly had. And they took us to diving on structures that are a fully formed city off the town of Mahabalipuram.
Now, you speak about this in the documentary, but I think this is really important to understand as well, that most of human civilization has been organized around water, right? Close proximity to water, obviously you can fish, travel, etc. And as the water levels change, some of those ancient cities could be completely covered.
Yes.
You've recovered some of these, you've seen
This
other
is one
people.
of the things that I think is missing from our understanding of the past. It amused me, but also irritated me, that in that open letter to Netflix, the Society for American Archaeologists claimed that they could absolutely for certain be sure that there was no lost civilization during the Ice Age. They knew it was a fact. And if there had been any civilization, they would have found it, and they would have published it.
Right.
Well, how do they know that there was no lost civilization then? Because it's really important to understand that archaeology is often driven by accidental finds. A lot of archaeology, particularly in the industrialized countries, is the result of somebody building a huge building project going on. Maybe a housing estate is going to be built, maybe a road is going to be built, maybe a railway is going to be built, maybe a dam is going to be built. And then let's call in the archaeologists to make sure that we're not going to wreck any ancient archaeology while we're doing this. And that's a lot of archaeological discoveries are made as a result of that, rather than of targeted inquiries. The second issue with ruling out completely the possibility of a lost civilization is that archaeology sets itself up as the sole arbiter as to what is and what is not evidence. So I and my colleagues argue that we should consider the possibility of a much older Great Sphinx, as we've just been discussing, on the basis of its geology. I'm just going to add a more complicated point. It's not only the geology. The Great Sphinx points perfectly due east. The sun rises perfectly on the spring equinox. If you go to the Giza Plateau or anywhere else in the world on the northern hemisphere, on the summer solstice, you're going to see the sun rising far to the north of east. Go there on the winter solstice, you're going to see it far to the south of east. But on the spring equinox, it rises perfectly due east, directly in line with the gaze of the Sphinx. The Sphinx is looking at where the sun rises at dawn on the 21st of March in our calendar. Now, because of this wobble on the Earth's axis...
What is that called again, the wobble?
It's called precession.
Precession.
Imagine a spinning top, which is spinning and is kind of doing this. Yeah. And that's the viewing platform from which we observe the stars and the sun and the moon and everything else. And obviously the changes in its orientation are going to change their orientation. And that's why we get the astrological ages. Again, mainstream science sneers at these things, but it is a simple astronomical fact that there are 12 constellations that lie along the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic, and they are the constellations of the zodiac. And right now we live in the age of Pisces, very near the end of the age of Pisces. It's a simple fact that the ancient Christians go back about 2,000 years. The fish was their thing. Before that, it was Aries, the ram. Ancient Egyptian symbolism at that time was very much focused on rams. Go back before that, it's the age of Taurus, roughly the Pyramid Age. That's why if 270-foot long rock-hewn monument in the Pyramid Age, you'd be more likely to make it in the form of a bull than in the form of a lion. Yeah. Of a lion. Because there is a time when you go back, guess when? About 12,000 years, that you find it's the constellation of Leo that is rising behind the sun. That's the age of Leo. Just as we live in the age of Pisces, that was the age of Leo. And there was a time when that monument would have looked directly at the place where the sun rises. First, it would have seen its own celestial counterpart, the constellation of Leo, sitting on the horizon, and then the sun rising beneath it. So to us, this, and I speak of myself, Robert Bauval, Robert Schoch, John Anthony West, and a few others, we think it makes more sense. Take the geology, take the astronomy. This monument has its origins 12,000 years ago. But Egyptologists say, no, we know the Sphinx was built 4,500 years ago. I'm not going to bore your audience with the details, but the evidence is incredibly flimsy. There isn't a single document that attributes the Great Sphinx to Khafre, who is supposed to be the builder of the Great Sphinx. There's nothing. It's just opinion, pure opinion. And we think that they are not right to dismiss the case for a much older Sphinx and to say that. So they select what evidence is evidence and what evidence isn't evidence. That's the second thing. And then the third and final thing is that huge areas of the world that have never been looked at by archaeology at all. Or if looked at by archaeology, looked at only minimally. Of course, the most important are the flooded continental shelves. And that's why Santa and I spent 7 years of our lives, frequently risking our lives, scuba diving all around the world. Sea level rose 400 feet at the end of the last ice age. Let's be clear, it did not rise 400 feet overnight.
Right.
This was a rise that was extended over a period of 11 or 12,000 years, from about 21,000 years ago down to 10,000. It was even still rising about 6,000 years ago.
All over the world?
All over the world, yeah. There was a global, all the world's oceans are connected, and but in local areas, if you have a very steep coastline, the effect of the sea level rise, the amount of land it eats up, is going to be a lot less than if you have a gradually sloping coastline. And 120 feet sea level rise on a very steep bit of coast is going to remove relatively less land, whereas on a very sloping bit of coast, it's going to inundate much more land. And the calculation is that 27 million square kilometers that was above water during the Ice Age is underwater now. Roughly, I think that's roughly 10 million square miles. I can't do the math in my head, but something like that. So it's an awful lot of land. I think it's Europe and China added together. It's not that there's been no archaeology done on the continental shelves. I think we're looking at something from Alexandria here.
Yes.
Yeah, we are. I've dived there as well. And that's inundated not because of sea level rise, but because of subsidence of the Nile silts. Alexandria stands on the Nile Delta, and the silts subsided and resulted in flooding. The Nile carries a lot of silt with it, a lot of earth with it, as it flows out of Uganda and out of Ethiopia and northwards into Egypt, and you come to the Nile Delta, and all that earth it's carrying, which also provided the fertility of ancient Egypt, all that silt is then dumped in the Nile Delta, and there were constructions were made on top of it, and the submergence of the sites off Alexandria, which is a magical, spooky place to dive, by the way. I've been lucky enough to dive there. The submergence of those sites is largely because of subsidence of land rather than sea level rise, because it's relatively recent. Those
So if you're
sites
saying the silt itself has dropped.
Yeah.
Right.
So anything
built on solid ground.
Yeah, anything built on top of it went down.
Guys, I'm in different clothes. Why is that? Because we were able to add another special taping at White Oak Music Hall. I'm fighting to get everybody in. I appreciate the demand so much. So, tickets are being released today, the day this comes out. 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. That's Texas time. So hurry up and buy the tickets, please. I appreciate the demand so much. I want to get everybody in that I can. Also, speaking of adding shows, we are adding shows at Zanies in Nashville, July 14th and 15th. The 13th is sold out. I believe I'm going to be in Huntsville on the 12th. Also, I got a bunch more shows. Please check the website because tickets are selling out for these shows, and I don't have time. We got to get back to Graham Hancock. But thank you guys so much. AkashSingh.com. Hurry up and cop. Also, guys, if you need tickets to a show that might happen to be sold out, again, my special taping is an example. You know where you can find them? SeatGeek. Look at that. Akash Singh tickets. And what's even better is SeatGeek will tell you how good or bad a deal is. Whatever tickets you need. If you see a green dot next to the ticket price, that means it's good. You should buy it. Red means don't buy it yet. Hold off. Something better is coming. No other ticket app is doing this for you. SeatGeek is where it's at. There are 28 million downloads on SeatGeek. It's the #1 rated ticketing app for a reason. And there are 70,000 events listed every single day. That includes concerts, sporting events, music festivals, and more. Also, if you need Andrew Schultz tickets, wherever you are on the globe, SeatGeek might be able to help you. Why don't you look at that? And just because we at Flagrant always come through for you, we got a code. Use Flagrant for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. Again, that's $20 off your first purchase with the promo code Flagrant. Make sure you do that right now. Just download the SeatGeek app on your phone. Buy your first tickets, use a promo code Flagrant, you get $20 off. Now let's get back to the show.
Why is it a spooky place to die?
Well, because you're coming across statues underwater, you're coming across columns underwater. The visibility is not perfect. It's a little bit kind of weird, and it's just magical in diving on an underwater city. But I cannot claim, and I do not claim that city is 12,000 years old. No, it's not. But I do claim that in connection with a giant stone circle called of Akijima in the Kerama Islands in Japan, which is 30 meters under sea level, where there has been no land subsidence, where you can calculate that it's been underwater for 12,000 years. I do absolutely claim that in terms of the enormous structures that lie off the coast of Mahabalipuram in Tamil Nadu in southeast India. Pumpahar, a little further south, there's a huge U-shaped structure underwater there that Santa and I dived on with a team from the National Institute of Oceanography in India. You have to be careful when you look at underwater structures. You have to look at all the conditions that have led to their submergence. And in some cases, it's very clear that they've been underwater for a very, very, very long time indeed. Malta, which we featured in Ancient Apocalypse.
Wait, when you went to Malta, did you go? Malta's the one that's divided. There's like an active civil war going on, right?
No, not for a long time.
But there's like a Turkish side and then a Orthodox Christian side, and they're basically like a border that they just kind of built.
No, not in.
I'm not thinking
Cyprus. Not in Malta.
Oh, am I thinking of Cyprus?
Yeah, could be Cyprus.
Malta's
Malta's
a wonderful tax haven and a good place to shoot.
Malta's at peace. Malta's at peace. It has been for a long time. But Malta used to be joined to Sicily during the Ice Age. Malta wasn't an island; it was part of the mainland.
Yeah.
Part of Italy, Sicily, all the way out to Malta was all above water during the Ice Age and all underwater now. So one of my interests as a diver is what do we find underwater in Malta? And what you find strikingly underwater in Malta is a repetition of the so-called cart ruts that you find above water in Malta as well, which have never been properly.
Cart ruts?
Yes, they're parallel tracks that are cut into the bedrock on the island of Malta. And they look actually like railway tracks.
Yeah.
I'm not claiming they were a railway, but they look, that's just a comparison. And there are even junctions in them. And nobody knows what they are. The word cart ruts is what they're called, but the notion that they were gradually cut out by carts being rolled over them doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It looks like they've been cut by hand, but more interesting is the fact that they continue underwater. And we've dived on those cart ruts down to 27 meters, which is 80, 90 feet maybe underwater. They've been underwater for thousands and thousands of years. And so then the issue becomes, are we secure on the dating of all the structures above water on Malta? And I suggest strongly that we're not. There's been very little carbon dating done on the Maltese temples. That carbon dating is itself insecure. I'm doing a debate with a leading archaeologist on the Joe Rogan Experience on the 24th of October.
Joe be having a debate, huh? That's his thing.
Yeah. It's a very good thing that this is happening. It's the first time that somebody representing the alternative point of view has actually been debated by somebody from the mainstream. The mainstream has normally said, "No, we don't want to talk to you guys. You're Looney Tunes. We're not going to give you a platform." But in this case, it is happening, and I have things to say about Malta that I'm going to preserve my ammunition for.
Can you give us a taste? Can you give us a little taste?
It's to do with the absolute insecurity of the carbon dating.
Do you think there's any submerged pyramids?
Just to finish that point, carbon dating, by the way, and again, this is not something that everybody knows. Carbon dating can only date organic material. It can't date stone. So if you're going to date a megalith according to the organic material found around you, you want to be pretty sure that the organic material dates from the same time as the megalith and wasn't introduced later.
Right. And there's no way of proving that it is or it isn't.
It's very difficult to do, and the fact is there are very few carbon dates from Malta, and the new dating work has been added usefully to that database.
And when are you doing this on Joe's Pod?
So 24th of October, and the archaeologist who's going to debate me is called Flint Dibble. He's American, but he teaches at the University of Cardiff in Wales, in Britain. His father was a famous archaeologist called Harold Dibble, and Flint has been very pointed and aggressive in his attacks on me following the Netflix show, which he has every right to be. I have wanted to debate another archaeologist who's called John Hoops from the University of Kansas, because he has been by far the most obnoxious in leveling these ad hominem attacks against me, and straw man attacks, like Hancock says this, Hancock says that, when Hancock doesn't say either this or that. But if you say it enough, it begins to have an effect. And I would have liked to have called John Hoops to account, and invited him to debate me, but unfortunately he backed out. He wouldn't do it. Flint Dibble, and this is genuine, Flint Dibble has had some health issues. I won't go into the details. And we've not been certain until very recently whether he will be able to make it. But kudos to him. It looks like he is going to make it. And what he's doing and what I'm doing on the 24th of October is we're both putting our reputations on the line. This is a pay-per-view event. This is a high stakes. This is a high stakes issue for both me and him, because anything can happen in a debate. I certainly intend to make sure that I'm properly prepared. I'm sure he's going to make sure he's properly prepared. I hope we can end up hugging each other and finding some common ground, rather than all of this hatred.
Okay. Now, sorry, there's one question. I'm sorry, but as society got more advancing this time, it seems we have less and less dependence on astronomy. Astronomy, when I'm thinking 4,005 years ago to now, it just kind of filled in the blanks of what we couldn't figure out on our own. So 12,000 years ago, if there's a really advanced civilization, why would astronomy play as big of a role in that, where everything is pointing to X, Y, and Z stars?
Well, first of all, let's consider what we mean by advanced. What is an advanced civilization? Are we really an advanced civilization? Do we look around much of our culture that we'd say that's incredibly advanced?
Technologically,
we're talking tech. We're technological.
And like scientifically,
Yeah, we believe that is advanced, and that's one of the mistakes in looking for a quote-unquote advanced civilization in the past, is that we tend to be looking for ourselves in our past, whereas it's possible for a civilization to be advanced in other ways. We could not measure longitude. Very important issue if you're a navigator and a sailor. We could not measure longitude until 1760s, 1750s, sometime in the second half of the 18th century. It took the creation of a very precise marine chronometer in order to be able to calculate what your longitude is. Otherwise, in the middle of a stormy night, you could find yourself 300 miles west of where you thought you were and crashing into a coastline. It's a really good thing to know longitude. There was £1 million in the 18th century was a lot of money. There was £1 million British prize for cracking the longitude problem. And it wasn't until the second half of the 18th century that it was solved. Wow. So it's weird that on ancient maps, copied from even more ancient source maps, there are precise longitudes, precise relative longitudes. This is one of the things that suggests to me that a civilized... The second thing is those maps show the world as it looked during the last ice age. Thirdly, and most important, they show Antarctica. Our civilization didn't discover Antarctica until 1820. So if I find a map from 1520 showing Antarctica, where the map maker informs us that he based his map on much older source maps that were falling to pieces, and that he know that will fall completely apart, he's preserved the information in those maps on his map. He's copying from older, and there is Antarctica. So did they just make it up? That's what the sun. That's
why do we still call it Antarctica? That was another thing that was like,
well, opposite of the Arctic.
Yeah, but it's like
very recent map.
It's like, bro, he called it Antarctica. Why don't you just look at the map? You're gonna call it the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we call it Antarctica. They used to call it Terra Australis, the southern land. If you go for the Orontius Phineas map, for example, you will find a much better.
Yeah, I thought that map said Antarctica. That's where it got chipped out.
Oh, I actually am really excited that we're talking about Antarctica.
Yeah, Antarctica is an interesting place.
This is my newest rabbit.
It's one of those great you see, there's Antarctica. That's the Orontius Phineas.
Right.
There's South Africa, and there's Antarctica, and there's the tip of South America, almost touching Antarctica. It's a bit bigger than it is today, but it would have been like that during the last ice age. That's a map from 1531, and what they're saying in the legend is that here in this map I expose regions that neither Eudoxus nor, I forget the names of all the ancient maps, none of them knew about it. They were hidden in darkness, but here they are. Hidden in darkness, I suggest they're hidden in darkness on ancient maps that Orontius Phineas copied from.
Wow.
It's an anomaly that it's sitting there, and it's not good enough to say that those map makers just wanted to balance the world, so they put a fantasy continent there, which later turned out to actually be there.
Right.
That's roughly what they're saying now. So that suggests to me a culture that was capable of exploring and mapping the Earth during the last ice age. The second issue is precisely astronomy. It's ancient knowledge of precession, which, again, our culture attributes to the Greeks, roughly between 300 BC and 100 BC. They're supposed to have been the discoverers of precession. Precession is very hard to observe. In a single lifetime, it's a fraction of an inch on the horizon, the change. So you have to keep records over long periods of time. You have to have a system that preserves those records and passes them down. So it's the knowledge of precession that is manifested in ancient mythology and in ancient traditions, often traditions that speak of a global flood. The Vedas themselves contain numbers that are related to precession. Again, I don't want to get too boring, but precession proceeds at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years, and this is the key number that is found in ancient mythology around the world, and variations of that number. So 72 plus 36 is 108. 108 is another precessional number. 108 divided by 2 is 54. That's another precessional number. That's why on the bridge at Angkor Thom in Angkor in Cambodia, you have 54 figures on either side of the bridge. And what are they doing there? Hauling on the body of the serpent Vasuki, who is wrapped around Mount Mandara, and they are churning the Milky Ocean. The argument is that this is a symbol for precession that is taking place there, and the numbers are multiplied. And another example I often give is the Great Pyramid itself. And it's very important, I made this point at the beginning, it's very important that when people want to check this calculation, that they use the true original height of the Great Pyramid, 481 feet that it was risen to. It's rather stunted 450 plus feet today. When you use the true original height of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the Earth. And when you measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the equatorial. Now, why does 43,200 matter? It's 600 times 72. It's another precessional number. It's a number generated by the precessional motion of the Earth itself. And there we enter a very clever piece of work. Great Pyramid is almost perfectly aligned to true north. It's within 3/60ths of a single degree of true north. It's an error, but it's really good. When you look at a monument on that scale, 6 million tons, 481 feet tall, and you get it within 3/60ths of a degree of true north, you are doing very accurate work. And you were saying something else.
I think they figured that out back in the day.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They were like,
they used astronomy. They used astronomy to figure it out.
But no, that they messed up a little.
I think they did the best they could. We also saw some big of movements of the Earth itself.
So it might have been right at the time.
There might have been a slight shift in the tectonic plates underneath. I'm not sure, but the fact is, it's 3/60ths off now. What it does tell us, apart from the level of accuracy, is that when they made that monument, they wanted to lock it in to the key cardinal direction: perfectly true north, perfectly true south, perfectly true east, perfectly true west, within 3/60ths of a single degree. And the cardinal directions of this planet mattered to them. They were speaking to the Earth with that monument. Secondly, it's located on latitude 30 degrees north, give or take a few seconds of arc. And latitude 30 degrees north is 1/3 of the way between the equator and the North Pole. Okay, so that's not an insignificant latitude. It's a significant latitude. It seems like the monument is speaking to the Earth. And then we find that it encodes the dimensions of the Earth on a scale provided by a key motion of the Earth itself, namely the Earth's precession, operating at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. Multiply that by 600, you get 43,200. That's the scale the pyramid is built on, 1 to 43,200. So it's a monument that speaks to the Earth, that is aligned to the cardinal directions of the Earth, and that encodes the dimensions of the Earth on a scale defined by the Earth itself.
And nobody would object to this at all?
Nobody that I know of, once they get the measurements right and realize that they're not dealing with a 450-foot tall monument, but a 481-foot tall monument, nobody disputes that. The pi, which is used to calculate the diameter and circumference of a circle, is built into the Great Pyramid. This is broadly accepted by Egyptologists. It's just that they regard it as a code.
And your theory is also that the ancient Egyptians did this, right? Because you said they did most of the work.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think they did. I think it was finished off. You define the very moment you start building that 52-degree slope into all the sides, you're defining what the entrance is going to be.
Right.
That's there from the beginning.
And what was their daily ritual use for the pyramids of Giza that you theorize?
Well, actually, nobody has any idea. The Great Pyramid was sealed. It was a sealed monument. So in roughly 900 AD, forgive me if I don't give the exact date, give or take 50 years, the Caliph al-Ma'mun, who was running Egypt at the time, wanted to get inside the Great Pyramid. This is 400 years before the earthquake. The facing stones are still in place. He could not find the true entrance to the Great Pyramid. It turned out that it couldn't be found. According to accounts, there was some sort of almost like a button that you pressed, and the doorway would slide, the facing stones would slide away, and you could find the true entrance. But he couldn't find that. So, but he did know that other pyramids had their entrance in the north face, other older pyramids like the Pyramid of Unas. He knew they had their entrance in the north face. So he started hacking away at the north face of the Great Pyramid. And that is the entrance through which you will have gone when you entered the Great Pyramid. It's called Mamun's Hole. He and his team hacked
Mamun's Hole.
Sledgehammers and chisels, and they broke their way in to the north face. And then as they were doing so, they heard a block falling in a hollow space. And then they knew they were onto something. That block that fell, caused by the vibrations that they had caused, must have been in some kind of passageway or chamber. So they headed towards that sound, and that's when they found the original passageway system of the Great Pyramid, which after you've gone through Mamun's Hole, gone around the little corner where it's all cut out of the rock, and then you find yourself going up into first of all, the ascending corridor, and then the Grand Gallery, which is the most majestic structure. They found the original entrance system in that way, and now the true original entrance is open,
right.
But it's not used by tourists to enter the Great Pyramid.
Okay, I want to talk about Antarctica, because I think this is going to be the new obsession. I feel like it's trending super high. Who knows if there's any truth to it, but a friend of ours, who will remain nameless, went there.
Yeah.
Got to cool experience, trip, etc. And he said a couple interesting things. He said the mountains looked eerily pointy and four-sided. He said way more mountainous than he thought it would be. I think the illusion made from looking at maps and watching penguins is
By the way, you can
just
see mountains. You can see mountains on the Orontius Phineas map, actually.
Oh, is that what the little edges
around the
are?
edges there?
Interesting.
Those are mountains.
Now, he also said this. He said a couple things. He said there is a pact with every country that has a slice of it that they will not dig or remove any minerals from Antarctica. And he even said that a scientist was there, said to them, World War III will not start until one of these countries breaks that pact. They are clearly protecting or preserving something that may or may not be under, I believe it's 3 miles, Mark was saying earlier, at its thickest of ice. Now,
see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny with a free Fandango movie ticket when you spend $35 at Applebee's. Give 'em hell, Indiana Jones!
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, only in theaters on June 30th. For limited time at participating locations. Tax and gratuity excluded. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, rated PG-13.
Mark, maybe you should describe the thing that you were saying before about there was a time where
I
Antarctica...
was reading an article that perhaps 90 million years ago there was a lush rainforest that is now covered in miles of ice on the Antarctic continent.
Yeah, that's probably true. If you go back that far, you would find that the Earth's climate was very different from how it is today. And there's undoubtedly a time, they found fossils on Antarctica, there's undoubtedly a time when Antarctica was lush and green. The question is, was it lush and green during the lifetime of the human species?
Yes, this is where it gets tricky.
And this is where it gets tricky. The Homo sapiens line descends from a line that goes back about 6 million years, not much further than that, if we accept conventional evolutionary theory. So 6 has been as cold and as frozen as it is today. Now, when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995, which is my first book tracing the possibility of a lost civilization, I was very interested in Antarctica, and I was interested in it because of the work of a previous researcher called Charles Hapgood. Charles Hapgood wrote a number of very important books. One of them is called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which precisely goes into this issue of ancient maps that don't fit our understanding of what the world was, how the world was supposed to be known at that time. And another is called The Path of the Pole. And he proposed a phenomenon that he called Earth crust displacement, whereby from time to time, the entire outer crust of the Earth, like the skin of an orange, might shift, leaving the core of the Earth in place, so that it could shift. So if you imagine a very loose orange skin, the fruit is inside, it's staying in place, but you're shifting the skin around it. Well, obviously then, if that happens, Antarctica could have been in warmer latitudes and could have been shifted into colder latitudes.
And how often does this happen?
Well, does it happen at all is the first question. I mean, of all the theories I've looked at and supported, this is the one that I've come in for the most criticism for. And I've been much more interested recently in the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis and the notion that a cataclysm occurred around 12,800 years ago, caused by impacts of comet fragments, and we can go into that. But when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, although I was interested in comets, I was more interested in Earth crust displacement. And the standard academic response to that is, look, Antarctica's been frozen for millions of years, and that rules out the whole Earth crust displacement argument. I think that even those who are still researching this field would prefer it to be the mantle rather than the crust of the Earth that moves. Again, it's very technical, that moves in one piece. But the idea is an Italian admiral called Flavio Barbiero who wrote an article for my website suggesting that Earth crust displacement could be kicked off by a comet impact which hits the Earth a glancing blow and causes a shift of this kind taking place. But by and large, I don't argue these days that Antarctica and Earth crust displacement are the mechanism we should be looking at. I'm much more interested in the very solidly scientifically grounded Younger Dryas impact. Back in 1995, when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, I was searching around for many possibilities that could have caused a global cataclysm in the range of 12 to 13,000 years ago, because that's what all the astronomy pointed at, 12 to 13,000 years ago. And Hapgood's theory seemed to me a very valuable and useful one. I still won't write it off. I won't dismiss it entirely, but I've shifted in the direction of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, simply because I'm in a constant argument with mainstream academia. And the issue to me, the most important issue to me, is the issue of a global cataclysm at the end of the Ice Age. What caused that cataclysm is a secondary issue. The cataclysm itself is the primary issue. And I found the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis a better, much more scientifically grounded explanation for that cataclysm than the notion of Earth crust displacement.
But do any archaeologists or any of these prehistorians dispute the Younger Dryas?
There's still a lot of argument around it. There's about 60 major scientists who are involved in the Comet Research Group. They're all credentialed scientists. They've all published dozens of papers in peer-reviewed journals, including Nature, including scientific reports, and many, many others on the hypothesis. But there's also a group of academics who are opposed to it and dispute that any impact ever took place. And then, even in those who do accept that the Younger Dryas was a cataclysm, some think that it may have been caused by solar activity rather than by comet impact.
How would that work?
Well, it could work at the end of the Younger Dryas. There are two moments in the Younger Dryas. The beginning is 12,800 years ago. It's a very strange moment in Earth history. This is when the world's climate, which has been warming up for a few thousand years, the Ice Age is still very much present. Have big ice caps on North America, big ice caps on Northern Europe, but it's been warming up gradually. And then 12,800 years ago, two things happened at once. First, a sudden cataclysmic drop in climate. It gets incredibly cold. As cold as it was at the peak of the Ice Age more than 20,000 years ago. It gets incredibly cold, but then puzzlingly, there's a release of water into the world ocean. I say puzzlingly because when the Earth is freezing, you would not expect meltwater to be going into the world ocean. It should be staying on the ice caps. And I cite the work of Cesare Miliani and his work on the submergence of Bahamian corals. This is how do you know that sea level rose? There are certain corals that can only exist within a certain number of feet of the sea's surface.
So they need the sunlight.
Yeah, and when they drown, that tells you the sea level has risen. And they point to a significant sea level rise 12,800 years ago at exactly the moment of this deep freeze. The comet impact hypothesis explains that because it says that the shock of the heat of the impact of large fragments of a comet on the North American and European ice caps would have been sufficient to release that freezing water into the world ocean, to cut the Gulf Stream. That's the central heating system of our planet. It's called the global meridional overturning circulation. It's these currents of warm and cold water that flow around the planet, and the Gulf Stream was cut, and the Earth got extremely cold. So I think the comet impact hypothesis does best explain that.
But so just real quick, so comet hits, cuts the Gulf Stream. Cutting the Gulf Stream
because it releases a huge quantity of meltwater from the North American ice cap almost instantaneously.
So the comet hits the ice. That is in North America
and Europe.
That water cuts the Gulf Stream because it releases all this, which was frozen
freezing water.
Gotcha.
Goes into the world ocean.
Temperature plummets. But at the same time, there's much more potential water in the oceans, so that when the temperature does rise, now you have that meltwater.
Well, now we need to go on. 12,800 years ago, in the 1,000 or 1,200 years after that, that's a window when all the great Ice Age megafauna go extinct.
Megafauna are
saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths, mastodons, antelopes, the whole collection of famous Ice Age megafauna. They all go extinct in that window. And clearly they didn't go extinct. It's the cataclysm of the Younger Dryas that made them.
Have you seen what is the gentleman's name? He's a guy who I believe excavates up in
Invincible Kessler.
Gold. Pretty sure it is. I'm forgetting what it is right now. But there are images of woolly mammoths who have had their legs completely shattered,
and
but they're intact.
And a Tim Thomas.
Is this a boneyard that's been?
Yes, yeah.
That's right. That's very, very, very interesting. I've not been there. I've not looked into it yet, so I can't speak authoritatively about it.
But it might speak to your opinion right there.
What I can say is that at Serrania del Indoso,
I got off Invincible because
there is an 8-kilometer long.
that Jalen Williamson just became a fucking buyout.
Which shows.
He a buyout now, so he clogging us up. I have to buy him to get him off the stroll.
To get back to the point, so we have this window of about 1,200 years where the Earth is very cold, the megafauna go extinct. But then 11,600 years ago, just as fast and dramatically as the Earth went cold, the Earth goes warm. You're looking at a 10-degree rise in global temperatures in a couple of hundred years. It goes very, very, in geological terms, very rapid and very fast. And sea level rises very quickly.
Curry right behind him.
11,600 years ago, it's
Curry should be about tomorrow for sure.
The collapse of the ice sheets and huge amounts of water go into the world ocean. Now that could realistically be caused by a sudden burst of solar activity, which melted down those ice sheets. But that's not what I.
Yeah, you fucking up the Invincible stroll now.
The notion that we're dealing with multiple bombardments from comet fragments, and in this case, you're looking at a comet fragment that goes into a world ocean, that sends up a huge amount of water vapor into the upper atmosphere, creates a greenhouse effect, and accounts for the warming that takes place at that time.
So 2 comets. One that cooled things down and one that heated things up?
Yeah.
Any idea why one would cool
down? Yeah, I sniped 2 of them.
Depends where the impact is. If the impact's on an ice cap and it's releasing enormous amounts of
the first day he came out, I had sniped 2 of them.
If the impact's in a world ocean and it's putting a huge amount of water vapor into the upper atmosphere, it's a greenhouse effect.
I kept one and sold one.
It's all theory. It's not fact. What is fact is the sudden warming at the end of the Younger Dryas and the sudden freezing at the beginning of the Younger Dryas.
So we're searching for explanations for that.
We're searching for explanations. I've picked the one I back, but I'm not claiming that I have to be right.
One thing I've been trying to snipe now, man, is like a hero fucking Yao, man.
This was a global cataclysm. It was sustained. It wasn't just a minute. It went on for
I can't snipe a Yao to save my life.
It's in our backyard. It's a very relatively recent human history. We're almost at the edge of history when we go to 11,600 years ago. That's, weirdly, the date that Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is built, 11,600 years ago. That, weirdly, is the date that Plato's Timaeus and Critias gives for the submergence of Atlantis, 11,600 years ago, before our time.
So what's happening to humanity in this 1,200-year window?
I need to be clear about that. Because archaeologists roll their eyes at any mention of Atlantis. If you even say the word Atlantis, you're automatically regarded as a member of the lunatic fringe.
Okay.
And if you've even said that word, all your work, all the 30 years of work you've done, the 1,000 dives that you've done on continental shelves all around the world, all of those can be written off simply because you said the word Atlantis.
It's flat Earth for archaeologists.
Yeah, it's flat. They detest the use.
Now tell us why the Earth is flat.
Well, that's one theory I definitely don't buy.
No. Give us the Atlantis theory.
So the story of Atlantis comes down to us from Plato. It's expressed in two dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias.
Okay.
Plato was writing at around
God damn.
BC.
Does that come from his uncle?
Yeah, it's arguably from a member of his family line, who was the Greek lawmaker Solon.
Solon, yeah.
Who did make a famous and documented visit to Egypt around the year 600 BC.
And he was told in Egypt.
And he was at the Temple of Neith at Sais in the Delta, and there are these inscriptions on the walls. That temple no longer exists. It's a ruin in the Delta now. There are these writings on the walls, and he asks a priest, what do the writings say? And the priest spoke Greek and ancient Egyptian, and he told Solon what the writings say, that there was this great civilization, that it was destroyed in an enormous flood. Plato, or Solon, refers to it as Atlantis. Atlantis is not an ancient Egyptian word. It looks like some attempt to translate into a meaningful Greek phrase what was originally an ancient Egyptian phrase. And that ancient Egyptian phrase, I can tell you pretty much for sure, was the homeland of the primeval ones. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But the point is that then Solon asks, when did this happen? And the priests say, they're very relaxed about it. They say, 9,000 years ago. So immediately we have a date that we can put to our calendar. 600 BC, he makes the visit. 9,000 years before that, that's 9,600 BC. Give or take 23 years, that is 11,600 years ago. That's when Göbekli Tepe is built. That's when Meltwater Pulse 1b begins to flood the world oceans. And again, my critics will niggle away at the edges of this and say, well, Meltwater Pulse 1b unfolded over 300 or 400 years. If you average it out, it wasn't that much in any one year. But who says it happened at average rates? Who says there wasn't a big rise and then a smaller rise? These things are very annoying. But the bottom line is 9,000 years before Solon is 9,600 BC. That's the Atlantis date. That's Göbekli Tepe's date. And then secondly, the Temple of Horus at Edfu in Upper Egypt is very important. There's been, I worked with a partial translation.
Edfu is
in Upper Egypt. It's sort of halfway to Aswan. In southern Egypt, it's kind of middle.
Aswan is the quarry, I believe.
Aswan is the quarry where they got a lot of the granite that they brought. It's about 500 kilometers south, but Edfu's a bit further north than that. But it's also on the Nile. Now,
y'all come to me,
It's
baby.
a relatively recent temple, probably built around 270 BC by the Ptolemaic dynasty of ancient Egypt. These were Greeks who had overtaken ancient Egypt. But although they colonized ancient Egypt colonized their minds, and they became ancient Egyptians, more ancient Egyptian than the ancient Egyptians.
You ready for season 8 tomorrow?
People go to Hawaii.
You know, like your dark spotlight challenge and
You
thing?
need to upgrade your room. If you still got posters hanging up in your room, that shit looks childish, and you have to upgrade. That's where Display comes in. Display is a one-of-a-kind metal poster that captures your unique passions. They are sturdy, magnet-mounted, and last a lifetime. You can customize, collect, rearrange them all. Display has both branded and artistic work. They have over 1 million designs available. They got official designs from Marvel, DC, both. That's crazy. And the NBA. So whether you want to buy a display for yourself or gift a display, they have a Floyd Mayweather. I happen to be very good friends. Brothers, you could even say, with a massive Floyd Mayweather fan. They also have a Guardians of the Galaxy one. That same friend loves Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I could get them a display. Display is unique. unique, easy. It's safe and magnet mounted, so it takes 20 seconds. You don't got to drill holes in a wall and then pay for it when you move out of your apartment or make your home look bad. Magnet mounted in 20 seconds. Display delivers its products worldwide in only 4 to 5 business days as well, so it's a perfect alternative and really not alternative upgrade for standard posters. To upgrade your room, go to displate.com/flagrant and use our code flagrant at checkout to get 20% off for 1 or 2 displays. 30% off if you buy 3 or more. So the more you buy, the more you save. Go to displate.com/flagrant. Again, that's displate.com/flagrant right now. Now let's get back to the show. All right, we're going to take a break real quick because if you're drinking, you might as well drink an adult beverage that's better for you, not some can of beer filled with a bunch of bullshit ingredients you've never heard of, or some cheap-ass vodka that's going to make your hangover crazy and make your life worse. You need June Shine. They have tons of easy-to-drink, to-go, better-for-you adult beverage options. They got margaritas, vodka sodas, rum cocktails made with premium ingredients and no added sugar. Unlike traditional canned cocktails that can have 20-plus grams of sugar. Again, I don't drink, but if you're going to drink something that is better for you. Got less sugar, got less carbs, not bullshit ingredients, and best of all, it doesn't give you that crazy, I just had a lot of sugar hangover. You give you a nice, light, bright buzz. June Shine can be found in over 10,000 stores across the country. It's available at all the big retailers you're already visiting for groceries and alcohol. Whole Foods, Target, Ralph's, Vaughn's, Bevmo, Kroger, all of them. We've worked out a special offer for our listeners as well, as we always do. At any store, you can buy 1 June Shine package and get the second one for only a penny. That's $12 to $20 off. Fuck that, though. The value dollar amount don't matter. You get 2 for the price of 1. I recommend trying one of their best-selling variety packs. It's a great way to try all their delicious flavors. So to do that, you go to juneshine.com/flagrant and text them a photo of your receipt, and they will Venmo you immediately. That's immediate. Venmo is right in your bank account. You don't got to wait for a mail-in rebate that you're going to lose. None of that. Right in your bank account. Just do it. It's that easy. JUNESHINE.com/flagrant. Now let's get back to this.
Inscribed on the wall of that temple, not in the language of ancient Egypt as was spoken 270 BC, but in Middle Egyptian, which goes back to about 2000 BC. Carefully inscribed, and we're informed that it's based on temple archives. See that a temple stood there before the Ptolemies rebuilt that temple, and it stood on the foundations of an even older temple. The archives were preserved. That's
okay, I'm gonna eat that player tomorrow.
Middle Egyptian, it's about 2000 BC, and it tells the whole Atlantis story. It just doesn't call it Atlantis.
That against the player. I thought we had him already.
It calls it the homeland of the primeval ones. It speaks of a great serpent that comes from the sky and splits the island in 2. It speaks of a huge flood that arises and kills off almost all the divine inhabitants, apart from a few survivors,
Bill Russell,
who then travel around the world. One of the places they go to is Egypt, and they make their first business to build primeval mounds in ancient Egypt that will be the places, the locations of all future temples and pyramids. The Edfu texts are very clear. Now, I just need to make this clear, because I relied on Eve Elizabeth Raymond, who was an early translator of the Edfu texts. But recently, the Edfu texts have been completely translated, every single word, into German by a gentleman called Dieter Kurt, and they've translated it all into German. It would be nice if it were all into English, because that's much more widely spoken.
What does it say in German?
Well, what it says in German, it supports everything in the original translation. There's not a single part of the original translation that's debunked by this. It supports it, and it adds information that wasn't there, because the reference in those Edfu texts to the destruction of the homeland of the primeval ones is 7,000 years ago, but that's in Middle Egyptian, which dates back to 2000 BC, so it goes back to 9000 BC again.
Okay, 9000 BC is 11,000.
Yeah, it brings us to the same date. So I think that Egyptologists have been too hasty to dismiss Plato's
real quick, so we can just understand what was said. The snake that comes down, like you said in the Netflix special, we can look at comets as potentially snakes. So this comet that comes and hits the island of Atlantis, that's like a direct shot.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But so maybe it doesn't hit exactly the island, but it's hitting close enough where the effects of that hit are going to dramatically affect the island.
Remember, they didn't call it Atlantis. They called it the homeland of the primeval.
And what does that mean, the primeval ones?
The ancient ones lived there. That was their homeland. Whoever
created the mountain.
Who then, their survivors, who included 7 sages, traveled around the world seeking to rebuild their lost lost civilization.
And we've heard this.
And Egypt was one of the places they went to.
Okay, now, some people say the Azores Plateau might be Atlantis. Have you ever been there? And maybe we can describe really quickly where that is.
Well, it's in the Mid-Atlantic, and on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is interesting because there's a phenomenon called isostasy. Isostasy is the Earth's surface is a little bit fluid. If you put a heavy weight on one bit of it, it's like the end of a seesaw. It's going to force the other bit up. So in Britain, we had an ice cap on northern Scotland. But right now, the Isle of Wight in the English Channel, far to the south, is sinking beneath the ocean. Why is that? Because the ice cap on northern Scotland pushed northern Scotland down and lifted up the Isle of Wight. Since the ice cap's gone, the Isle of Wight is going back underwater.
You see this in the islands off of Italy, like Capri is starting to shift and rotate a little bit. Yeah.
It's isostasy that causes that.
Okay.
And isostatic rebound in this case. And there is some indication that the ice cap on North America may have had an effect on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and may have raised it to a higher level than it was today.
Oh, so wait a minute.
But I'm not. I need to be clear. I'm not looking for Atlantis there or anywhere. I don't think there was one location. Every story and reference, and I don't think we should be looking for a genetic location for it either.
Right.
Just as it would be really hard to look for a genetic location of America today, the U.S. culture is a multicultural society. There's a multi-ethnicity society. I suspect quote-unquote Atlantis was like that. I suspect that it was all over the world, that it occupied the best real estate on Earth, the lands that are now under a few hundred feet of water.
For sure. I'm here for a little bit.
We could at least look for
Still trying to snap a hero.
If there was a definite heartland for it, I think we should be looking for those remains on the flooded continental shelves all around the world. And that's what I spent 7 years of my life doing. Was diving on the continental shelves and finding again and again ruins and structures that weren't supposed to be there. I think there's a whole story of humanity that's missing underwater. And while I'm saying that, I would like to give credit to archaeologists. There is some work now being
called
done
sniping, man.
Archaeology, which isn't any longer just looking for shipwrecks from the medieval period or even from the 20th century, but 19th century, but they're looking at the flooded continental shelf.
It's called getting stuff for cheap and selling it for more.
This work should have been happening for decades. It's just beginning. I think that's going to reveal a great deal. And I know it's going to reveal a great deal because I found a great deal. But I want to add that the Amazon rainforest and the Sahara Desert are also...
Got to make Mo MT.
Yes. And we can't claim that there was no lost civilization of the Ice Age while there's so much of the world we never looked at all.
Especially the Sahara Desert, right? Because there could be thousands of pyramids just covered in mounds of sand right now.
They really could.
We are finding a lot in the Amazon.
I ain't got no Yao Ming.
The LiDAR in the Amazon.
The LiDAR work in the Amazon is fascinating.
Okay,
I hope to be back in the Amazon within the next few months.
Okay, I want to, while we're talking about Amazon, ayahuasca.
Yes.
Psychedelics.
I'm into this.
Okay.
Do psychedelics.
Yes. And how they tie into
These myths
in ancient civilization and potentially using the knowledge or experience gained from these psychedelic drugs to maybe build these huge megalithic structures.
Yeah.
How big a role do you think psychedelics have played in prehistory?
Well, it's one of the reasons why we
could do that
ourselves in the past, because we've had the horrific, vicious, evil thing called the war on drugs for the past 50 plus years, which is gradually going away, thank God. You know, but we're a culture that's hated psychedelics since the time of Richard Nixon, and we kind of just assumed that every culture in antiquity also hated psychedelics. No, they didn't. They were deeply involved with.
It's the end of the year, bro.
Talking about the Eleusinian mysteries in ancient Greece.
What's that?
If I wanted to do it and buy shit and do all that, I would do that.
In Greece, what's left of it, they served up a potion to all the initiates. And the initiates included Sophocles, Pindar, Plato himself. All the great minds of ancient world went to Eleusis. They were given this brew, which was called the kykion. Then they went down into these deep chambers underneath the temple of Eleusis.
If I was like hurting for MTs and cars, I ain't hurting. I could sell any card at any time.
They knew that they knew that death was not the end. They had no fear of death anymore. after they'd had this experience. It sounds a lot like a psychedelic experience, and then we have the work that's been done on that brew. And that brew was made, we're told it was made from barley, mint, and water. But what grows on barley is Claviceps paspali, which is an LSD-like fungus.
Love it.
Ergot, which is soluble in water. There are ergots that are very dangerous, but there are ergot. Ergot is the kind
That's
of
still
fungus.
defeating the point of making MT.
And some of them are
The cars I got, it's about
but this one is
not spinning, climbing back up from the bottom. That's how you play the game.
They were drinking LSD in the Temple of Eleusis, and they were having revelations about the meaning of life, and they were creating great philosophy and brilliant ideas at the time. It's, of course, massively connected to this surge of intellectual activity in ancient Greece. But ayahuasca...
You gotta realize everybody play the game different reasons. Some people want the cars, the fake like they in tournaments, and like they finna win some money. They think they pros.
They're pictured in many of the...
I don't really be trying to play the game.
...that show the seven sages, they're holding a pine cone to somebody's head, you know.
Yeah.
There's a suggestion that the pineal gland, it has been suggested that the pineal gland secretes dimethyltryptamine. DMT. I think that the more recent work on that suggests it probably doesn't, but that it's a locus for endogenous. All of us have DMT in our bodies. We're all illegal here.
Yeah, we're all carriers.
We're all carriers. It's a natural brain hormone.
Yeah.
The exact question of where in the body it's generated, some people think it might be the lungs these days.
Snipe, make some excitement out of it.
Yeah.
I know I can buy any damn car.
Associated with it in a number of ways, and it's associated. The pineal is the third eye.
If I wanted, I'll just...
It was an eye. The pineal was an eye. It still is.
Buy MT. Risk the band. Go buy fucking 20 million MT and buy every damn thing.
And a retina.
We've just evolved out of it.
Yeah, it's gone deeper into the brain. It's no longer light sensitive, but it's still arguably the third eye. So the connection of the pineal and DMT is not absolutely clear, but there is likely some connection.
Okay, so the idea of us looking for ourselves in the past, we're looking at how people build the pyramids, and we're going, well, you know, we have these cranes. Where are your
Probably
cranes?
gonna play like a
Instead
comp tournament or something. I'll sell some cars and then just buy y'all to play with them in a tournament. Unlock Bo, Manute Bo. You need Manute Bo if you was in the damn tournament.
Well, it's an interesting discussion.
You don't even need Yao, you need Manute. And then people just get Yao because he get locked in. You got to keep him.
For a start, new evidence that's emerging from scientific studies. At last, psychedelics have been taken out of the closet and are being examined for their therapeutic potential. And one of the things that it's very clear that psilocybin definitely...
That's the only reason Yao expensive, really.
Closely related to DMT. It's a kind of
he the key piece to the damn Manute Bo.
Promote neuroplasticity. They cause new neurons to grow in the brain. They make us smarter. Let us pay great tribute to Terence McKenna, a brilliant thinker in this field, whose stoned ape hypothesis and whose book, The Food of the Gods, was one of the early recognitions that psychedelics may have been the trigger that took our ancestor out of millions of years of boredom and put them on the path that we recognize as modern humanity. Yeah. It's a perfectly reasonable thing. Also, the way that psychedelics are very helpful with depression is very interesting. And why is that the case? Depression, and I speak from experience because I suffered myself from a long period of depression back in the early 90s. Depression is a very narrow, rigid frame of mind where you get locked into recurring patterns of thought and they're very negative, and you keep on repeating them to yourself, and you start hating yourself, and you just can't bear anything, and you're locked, and you can't escape from it. And what psychedelics seem to do is that they break that pattern. They just break it completely. And in this case, for depression, what seems to work...
He only going for 100. I already know. You don't need to sell them.
Great as well.
You have to snap yourself out of it.
Yeah, I already know.
Also, like, I think in depressive states,
I be watching the news and shit. You get them level 1. Then you get them level 40.
Yeah, and that constant negative thought, but taking and having a psychedelic experience will will make you realize maybe how small you are in the grand scheme of things, or how you are intertwined into the fabric of humanity, so it can break out of that. Yeah, I like
Ego
that.
death will disconnect you from the universe conspiring against you.
Exactly. You're not that important.
And if you belong to a species that has been making the same kind of stone tool without any changes for more than 1 million years,
I ain't worried about none of them, man.
clearly cultural information is being passed down, and clearly you're locked in a very narrow frame. And then suddenly it changes, and our ancestors start producing this extraordinary cave art.
I'm gonna keep both of them motherfuckers.
Whether you're talking about that
I'm gonna keep Invincible and
in
Endgame.
Colombia, or whether you're talking about Lascaux Cave in France, the art is stunning, and it is classically psychedelic art. It is featuring geometry, patterns of swirling dots, zigzag lines. There's Serrania de Landosa, and there's one of the extinct Ice Age megafauna with the arrow pointing at it up there.
I might not even like the in-game shot. Like, I really don't like the in-game KD shot. I like the hero shot.
Chains that are shown out there on the left. These are all classic psychedelic visions. Very often, as people enter a deeply altered state of consciousness, it starts with geometry and patterns, and then it manifests more into entities. And those entities are often very anthropic in form.
I'm more interested in the damn Embiid, the MVP Embiid, and
not something that you see every day, but something that is very common, frequently common, very common.
Durant being the face of the damn season. So I wonder what damn Durant they about to give us.
Psychedelics is the encounter with entities.
And we already got the damn Invincible.
To communicate with us, and again, this is where the archaeologists roll their minds, because they like to think that consciousness is entirely local to the brain. It's all manufactured by the brain, and this is just our brain on drugs. Whereas in fact, the opposite seems to be true. The brain seems to be acting as a receiver for consciousness rather than as a manufacturer of consciousness.
And what does that mean?
Well, what it means is that we have to function in a very tough physical universe.
I just finished my spotlight so I can get that Bill Russell.
It's written down in scientific textbooks. We've got to know that if we bump into that wall, it's going to hurt. We've got to understand all of that.
I ain't selling my Invincible, man. I'm gonna collect all of them.
In this physical realm, but what's useful for that is what is rightly called the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. But there are many other states of consciousness that are available to us, and psychedelics unleash a completely different state of consciousness from the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. And in that state of consciousness, we have these extraordinary experiences, and amongst those experiences, the most important are the encounters with entities that communicate with us. Now, we have a problem in trying to decide what is going on here. A very important project just underway at Imperial College in London, and another project that's going to be launched in Colorado, I think in Denver itself, within this year, where human volunteers, I hope to be one of them in Colorado. They turned me down in London because I've suffered from epilepsy since 2017. And there's no indication whatsoever that DMT would cause epilepsy, and I've smoked loads of DMT, and I know it doesn't cause epilepsy.
Nobody posted over here,
all the legal hoops to get permission.
Oh, these damn Bio Invincibles, man.
In their lab. Yeah. So they've not accepted me as a volunteer, but I'm hoping I might get accepted as a volunteer here in America. What it is extended release DMT, DMTX. DMT is normally
so it's just going to keep you high?
Keep you high for an hour, yeah.
Instead of, what is DMT, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
And how long does it feel when you're high? 5 minutes, 10 minutes on DMT?
Oh, when you're in the DMT space, it can feel like forever.
So an hour is almost horrifying.
Does time not exist?
Well, yes, this is what many of the volunteers say, is that it's an alarming prospect to be in that space for an hour. They're being delivered it by drip constantly directly into their bloodstream. They can signal at any time, I've had enough, if they're really feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. But by and large, most of the volunteers went through with it. I moderated a panel with 4 of the volunteers.
Anything interesting that they
and
say?
A gentleman called Andrew Gallimore, who's invented the technology that's going to be used in Colorado. Yes, the very interesting thing is that all appeared to be meeting essentially the same entities.
So the gnome machine elves. They might be machine elves, they might be gnomes, they might be therianthropes, but they're playful, they're tricksy, they're tricksters, and they
Kessler came up.
And they're also moral teachers. This is the funny thing. They make us confront our baggage.
How so?
Well, I can say in my case, I recently had an experience with the other kind of DMT.
I should have got that Kessler.
Which is 5-MeO DMT.
He ain't set up for nothing though.
The DMT we're talking about is NN-DMT.
Okay.
And that is the one that most frequently produces entity encounters and the sense of telepathic communication with entities. And science is not in a position to write that off. You know, quantum physics is looking at the possibility of multiple dimensions, very open to that possibility. Maybe what's happening is that our consciousness is getting retuned by DMT to gain access to dimensions of reality that are normally close to us.
I'm surprised Curry ain't a bio now.
But actually, it's all there. And in a deeply altered state of consciousness, the need for the alert problem-solving mindset is damped down, and we can open up to other areas of reality. Who knows what's going on there? But the issue is, are people learning something new in this state? This would touch on the question of whether psychedelics were helpful in energizing an ancient civilization and getting it going. I would cite the very well-known case of Kelly Mullis, the polymerase chain reaction PCR test, which has been fundamental for all DNA work subsequently. He admitted openly that he would never have made that discovery if he hadn't taken LSD. LSD gave him that discovery.
You said you recently had an experience with the other type of
5-MeO.
Yeah. What was that?
It was beautiful. Okay, so 5-MeO DMT is a bit controversial because in the basic form it comes from the secretions of a particular kind of toad. And those secretions can be scraped off and smoked directly. In that case, the smoke is quite cloudy, and you're ingesting not only the 5-MeO DMT, but other elements that are in the secretions of the toad. It's possible to have synthetic 5-MeO DMT, which
too many of them, man.
Which doesn't have
everybody and their mama selling their curry.
Secretions of the toad, and which doesn't involve killing toads. And that's the kind of 5-MeO DMT that I have.
Everybody's selling it. Who the hell buying them?
In a pure synthetic form. I was alarmed before I did it because I've had alarming experiences on the other DMT and NDMT. Our facilitator helped me out and helped others in the group out by giving us MDMA first. We had.
Yeah. I already know it.
It's only the second time in my life.
That's why I said it. Everybody's selling them. Who the hell buying them? And everybody getting a free one tomorrow. So who the hell even gonna buy that one?
We had that 3 or 4 hours before we had the 5-MeO DMT. And then 3 at a time we lay down and when we first sat up.
Somebody don't know what the hell going on?
Take one massive deep inhalation on the pipe and then hold it in and then release it and then
That motherfucker for goddamn
sit up. She does it with
logging in tomorrow.
And she did it with the 5-MeO as well. Just sit up and she does these mudras. Very, very impressive. I have to lie down. I can't be seated. I can't be standing up. I gotta lie down flat. And I actually.
They just gave us Invincible Curry. They should have waited. Curry should have been later for his end game.
And then.
They could have waited deeper into season 40 to give us in-game Curry.
Was like a feather with an eye at the end of it. But most of it was about how I need to honor and respect and love my wife. And how
that was a movie we should be doing to get you to see that.
You know that I have to, but that I have a problem with anger. I get angry too quickly, and
should have given everybody
can be very hurtful to other people.
A free in-game Topo Fall or Ben Simmons.
And basically said you gotta fix this.
And how does it show it to you? Is it intuition or
it was more intuition. It wasn't a scene of me shouting, but it was a recognition that that's what I do and that it's harmful and useless. And it's harmful to me and it's harmful to everybody around me.
So there's a communication with a celestial being without any words at all.
Without any words, but you get it. The other intention that I set.
I was surprised Curry done no buyout.
On that day, with about.
That's gonna be a buyout tomorrow.
Each one, and on the third go.
He can't be selling them for like fucking 105 or something.
My intention was that I should.
really helped me to get rid of my migraine headaches, because I suffer very badly from migraines. In fact, it's a kind of curse. And I wanted to focus on that. Maybe there's some way that it could affect me. And I did feel it.
You know what? Fucking invincible I never see is fucking Kareem.
Migraines often start, and then massaging my temples. And then
I never see Kareem pop up on shit.
And it returned to the issue of my relationship. And I thought that
I didn't even see nobody snipe fucking Kareem.
The 5-MeO DMT had fixed my migraines. But the very next day, I had another massive migraine. And I think what happened was that 5-MeO DMT was saying, actually, we can't fix this. Let's move on to something more important. It was an extraordinary experience. I wouldn't recommend anybody to do it completely alone or any kind of DMT. I think it's important to have a responsible facilitator who's used to handling people in this state. Everybody responds in different ways. Some people can really freak out. It's not necessarily a bad thing to freak out. It's not necessarily a bad thing to feel fear. But you want somebody around who's a sitter, who understands the medicine, and who can help you through that.
You said earlier that it removes you from the problem-solving consciousness state,
which we're normally in. We're normally thinking of the next problem we have to deal with.
How do we think? And then
Kareem.
Sometimes in that state, we're not dealing with
no
problems that we have internally. We're not dealing with the trauma, the relationship, those things.
You ain't no damn snipe, Javari.
Exactly. So what's kind of interesting to me is even the way that you describe it, it's put a pause on those problems.
I'm about to buy this goddamn Jalen.
Every second to do kind of like.
Why they get this damn Jalen off my damn stroll?
I wonder what is on the other end of self work. Like I wonder when you get through a lot of those things that you need to work on, where else they can take you. Because I don't think they go, you're good, see you later. Maybe you start to seek some of that. Maybe you need to deal with all of your stuff before you're ready for that higher consciousness.
Well, maybe both things can happen all the time, because virtually every powerful psychedelic journey I have, and ayahuasca is certainly that, and my last ayahuasca journey was in 2019. DMT, NN-DMT more recently, and then 5-MeO DMT. They all sooner or later deal with my baggage. I carry a lot of baggage. Those of us who carry less baggage tend to have a gentler trip, but in my case, it's right in my face, and you got to deal with it.
And you keep going after it.
I keep going after it because it's very useful teaching. And
I can't grab 8 rebounds with RJ Barrett.
Yeah, and it's really important to recognize that these substances are not a magic pill. It's going to fix you overnight.
I think people use them as that.
They're not.
I think they've become trendy in a way, and I think a lot of people are seeking out ayahuasca because they're like, hey, I have this block, and if I just do this ayahuasca, it's going to fix it for me, and then it's done.
Chances are it'll be done for a few weeks, and then you'll fall back into the old pattern.
It's like a chiropractor or something.
You have to carry on the work. Yeah, the real work begins after the session.
So it's a recognition of what's going on, what you have to confront, and then you have to do that work.
Then you have to do that work. But as to novelty, I mentioned Kerry Mullis and the polymerase chain reaction. The other interesting one is Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Did I mention them?
No, but they've been.
They also were very forthright, particularly Wozniak, that the Apple computer would not have been invented without LSD.
Wow.
And Francis Crick, who's the discoverer of the double helix form of DNA, along with other colleagues, he was a regular user of LSD in the 1960s before it was illegal, and the 50s. And he also suggested that he first got the double helix form under the influence of LSD. So these are scientific examples of people who are making a quantum leap forward in knowledge as a result of their psychedelic experiences, not as a result of their alert problem-solving state of consciousness that we value so highly, but as a result of a completely other state of consciousness. In my case, the novelty I got was I was given a novel during 5 ayahuasca sessions in Brazil. I had never written novels before. I always write nonfiction, and I still mainly write nonfiction. But I was given a novel. I was given the whole plot of the novel, and I ended up writing that novel. The session was in 2007. I finished the novel in 2010. It was called Entangled. I had no idea that I had a novel in me, and perhaps my readers don't like it. I don't care. I found an area of myself that was new to me, and I was able to the entire story.
I don't think no packs dropping.
To me how it existed like plot, beginning, middle, end, or existed character?
I saw the principal characters, and
I ain't really seen no promo. I just seen they dropping. They give me that free Curry level 1, Embiid level 40. They had Durant on the cover, and they say some more Invincibles coming, and in-game and Invincibles coming.
Are going to go wild. They're going to drug shape me forever. But they were brought together by an entity called the Blue Angel, whose purpose was that there's a demon who travels through time called Sulpa, and he's seeking to
Invincible
destroy
dirt.
everything that's good about humanity, and he does. And
You
he's doing
get,
that in
well, you get them. You probably you'll get Invincibles Friday, so they probably ain't gonna drop nothing until Friday.
These two young women in these two different time frames to do battle against.
You'll get the Curry start of season 8 to work on, and then Invincibles Friday. Probably get some good Invincibles.
How does that present itself?
I did see it a bit like a movie, yeah.
Probably like a Dirk or like a fucking.
I saw my young character from the Stone Age, Rhea, throwing stones very, very brilliantly.
Then Invincible Bill Russell already.
I saw the connection between these two women, and the sense of a supernatural battle of good against evil, against which the human story is played out, and that ultimately we humans always have a choice.
Should be getting fucking like
good and evil. It might be at a very small scale, or
Invincible Ben or in-game Ben Simmons coming.
To human society as a whole. It's a very small scale
Or Luka.
damage to us and those
Luka might be coming.
But it was that sense of that happening. I didn't have a novel in me before that. I've never tried.
I can see Luka, Ben.
Not just literary works, but
Tim Thomas.
Music that you've immediately connected to and thought, oh, this is
Kevin Garnett.
Hallucinogenics. This
Jimmy Butler.
Experience that I had. Is there? It could be a cartoon for children.
Vince Carter.
Right, 100% or no? Yes.
Invincible Devin Booker.
What was that? The original people say that.
David Robinson.
No. There's like a almost like an anime thing that people thought it was.
I'm not sure, but somebody involved in that story was definitely experiencing altered consciousness.
Apparently, JFK had experiences with psychedelics.
I wouldn't be surprised. Again, this is a mistake that our society has made, is to cut us. And maybe it's not a mistake. I don't really do conspiracy theories, but maybe it was a deliberate thing back when the war on drugs was declared. It's
Well, we did a lot of research with psychedelics.
Psychedelics lead people to ask questions. They don't leave us comfortable with the prevailing order of things, both in ourselves and with the way society functions as a whole. And we begin to become critical and questioning in a way that we might not have been before. Yeah. And I think this was felt to be dangerous, and they were demonized with lies and complete dishonesty. But they were.
Do you remember when psychedelics were gaining popularity? This is what, 19...
when you say gaining popularity...
60s, mainstream popularity.
Well, I don't think you could call hippies, mainstream in any way.
The way that we look back on them, they were the mainstream. It was like the dominant culture, but I guess they were fringe and odd for the time.
They were fringe and odd, and they were they were feared by those rooted and grounded in mainstream culture.
Yeah, hippie was a pejorative, right?
Yeah, it was a pejorative. He's just a hippie.
Yeah.
It was a negative term. So I guess that we're looking at a shift in human consciousness that certainly began probably in the late 50s and was well underway in the 60s. And had it been allowed to continue,
I like that Russ card. It looked good.
Society in many, many ways. But then
good card out on that Russ.
All these lies and propaganda were spread, false stories about how dangerous psychedelics are. I want to be very clear about that. Psychedelics are extremely serious business.
Yeah.
And this needs to be understood. I do not believe that psychedelics are for children, or cannabis for that matter. I think we'd be much better keeping them out of the hands of children if they were totally legal and it was accompanied by wise advice.
They can also unearth existing psychological issues.
Yes, they can.
You have to be really dangerous. Really careful.
If somebody's suffering from schizophrenia.
Yeah.
psychedelics could be very bad news. So
and a lot of people don't know that they have schizophrenia.
A lot of people don't,
especially if they're.
So there is an element of danger and risk, and this is why a sitter who's deeply experienced with the substance is.
Sitter is your shaman.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah. We haven't yet invented a word for shaman in Western culture, but we need to. The word comes from Tungus Mongol. It means one who sees. And it was then applied by anthropologists because they found that figure, that person who played that role, was found in multiple different cultures all around the world. And they said, let's just call them all shamans.
Right.
But the word comes from a specific culture. We don't have a word for that in our culture yet. Facilitator or sitter are the ones that I use. This is one of the many areas where Western culture would do well to learn from indigenous cultures that have been using psychedelics responsibly for thousands and thousands of years.
What is responsible psychedelic use to you? What do you start with when you do it with?
Intentions, meditation, things like that.
Yeah, it's intentions, meditations. It's not recreational. You're not taking it to have a party.
Oh, what the hell are you talking about?
You're taking it to make contact with the dead. Ayahuasca means the vine of the dead or the vine of souls. Iboga is the plant that enables people to see the dead. That's what these things mean. There's so much of a connection to the afterlife with them. And that's a serious inquiry. You know, if you've lost a relative recently and you've not had closure, it can be very beneficial to have an afterlife contact with that person. And many people report this experience. I've had the experience myself with Iboga.
Really?
Yeah, I met my dad. He passed away shortly before that. Now again, the scientists could say, you were just fantasizing that. It was just your imagination. But I met him.
Fuck the scientists.
And
so what happened?
He came to me in the vision. It was shadowy, but he basically made me feel okay about the key issue, which was I was not with him at his deathbed. And I was haunted by that. And after that, I didn't feel haunted by it anymore. And increasingly with my experiences with psychedelics over many decades now, I have no fear of death. I don't fear death. I do fear pain. I do fear humiliation. All day, I'm 72, 73 next birthday. You know, I have to be realistic about this. I only have so long in this incarnation. As we get older, our bodies get infirm, get weaker, we become more and more I don't like being dependent on others in any way. And I detest pain. And I would like to, who doesn't? And I'd like to avoid it as much as possible. Death, I don't fear, and I'm not even anxious about it. When it comes, I regard it as the next great adventure, and I hope that's what it's going to turn out to be. But who knows? Nobody can say the definitive word on death. Yes, our bodies die, but does our consciousness die? We don't know that. Any scientist who says you're just a meat robot, there's nothing else to you but your physical body, they're stating an opinion, not a fact. So for me, it's the beginning of a next great adventure, and I think psychedelics help me with this, and I know from the recent science that's being done that they are helping people who are terminal, who are anxious about death. Again, psilocybin is the one that's most generally trialed in this respect. They tend to lose the fear of death. They don't fear it.
And losing the fear of death is, I think there's a difference between a fear of death and a fear of maybe missing out on what's going on. For example, like let's say you were to do some sort of like rock climbing thing with no ropes. You would probably be afraid of dying.
I'd be afraid of falling, and I wouldn't. Look, I regard life as a precious gift. I am fortunate enough, and so are you. All of us in this room.
Flawless.
Yeah. And to have this big brain, and to be able to make choices between good and evil, and to live the experience of life. This is a theater of experience. We will come into it as children. We will go through it all our years. We will be confronted by all sorts of opportunities to learn and to grow and to develop. And I regard that as a gift. So I'm not into taking foolish and unnecessary physical risks. I have taken them when they're necessary. Santa and I both nearly lost our lives more than once during our diving expeditions. We've been into war zones on our research. We've had bullets fired at us. If the risk is worth taking for a project that I'm pursuing that is close to my heart, I will do it. But I won't foolishly or unnecessarily take a risk. Seems like a waste to do that. Risk in itself has no virtue. It's necessary risk that has some virtue. But but I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Yeah, because I think it's important to have a fear of death.
Yeah.
And I think as we have more things that we don't want to leave, loved ones, family, the beautiful things that success brings, I find myself going, is it worth doing this stupid, frivolous activity?
How many motherfuckers had this motherfucker?
Lose out on all these beautiful things that I've been able to get. Exactly, no.
It's not.
So that's not the type of death.
No. I'm speaking to you as a man whose next birthday is 73.
And you're like, one of these days, it's going to happen.
I mean, in truth, the door of death stands right beside us, all of us, every minute of every day.
Yeah.
It can happen at any moment.
Yeah.
Whether through an illness or an accident, you can be gone.
You could be gone.
Just like that. But by and large, as you get older, it does get closer.
Yeah.
And you start to think about these things. And then inevitably I thought, well, I don't know how long I have left. But what is clear to me is that I'm not going to hasten my death. But that if it comes, I'm not going to regard it with fear and horror. I want to be as alert as possible and as awake as possible, and I hope to be ushered through the doorway of death with a psychedelic journey.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break for a second because, listen, some of you guys did the tough thing during COVID, okay? You paid your people, you pulled your business through the pandemic, and now doing the tough thing could qualify you for up to $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org, okay? Government funds are available to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. This is not a loan, and you don't have to pay it back. This program is complicated, but nobody knows more about it than the CPAs and tax experts at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work and share a percentage of the cash they get you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, including those who took PPP loans. Even if you had increases in sales, you did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. Okay, let covidtaxrelief.org help you get up to $26,000 per employee. Visit covidtaxrelief.org. That's covidtaxrelief.org. covidtaxrelief.org. Now let's get back to the show.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break real quick because you need a better wallet. Exter is the world's largest smart wallet brand for a reason. They design innovative solutions to improve the way you carry your everyday items. All of them, right here. Quick card access. Look at that. All my cards right there. I don't have to search for anything. It's all right there. Click of a button. Also, more importantly, it has 2 key tracker features. You know what that means? It is trackable worldwide. And these wallets offer RFID protection, or as Andrew calls it, they're boot-proof. You know, when you're out in foreign countries, sometimes they don't even just steal a wallet. They can just get the information from out of your pocket, like that boop. RFID protection, that means it's skim-proof. So if you're maybe in Greece when this episode comes out, this is the wallet that's perfect for you. And more importantly, Flagrant, as always, will hook you up. So if you check out these wallets at shop.extra.com/flagrant, you'll get up to 25% off site-wide with the code FLAGRANT. Again, that is shop.ekster.com/flagrant. You get up to 25% off with the code FLAGRANT. Now let's get back to the show.
Are you spiritual? Like, do you believe in God? Are you? I'm not a Christian. I don't belong to any of the mainstream religions. I don't, and I haven't for a very long time. But I think that life is an enormous mystery, and that fundamentally, for want of a better word, it is a spiritual mystery. We're on a spiritual journey here. I think that the mainstream religions have narrowed that journey down into dogma and into creeds, where in most of the mainstream religions, most of the time, whether we're talking about Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, the Abrahamic faiths, the monotheistic religions, people, there are exceptions, but a lot of people are not having any direct contact with spirit. They're being taught what to think. They're being told what to think by basically a bureaucrat who happens to be a priest or a rabbi or a mullah who's saying, these are the teachings, you must adhere to these teachings, and actually if you don't adhere to them, we're going to censor you in some way or another. To me, that's no more spiritual than doing business out on the stock exchange. It's an expert telling me what to think. Whereas a spiritual experience is direct contact with the quote-unquote divine, which is not necessarily some old bad-tempered guy sitting up on a cloud. Far from it, as a matter of fact. That is not a representation of what
The hell is he talking about?
What was that like?
In the most compelling case, she took the form of an enormous serpent who wrapped herself around my body.
Serpents always coming back.
They're always coming back. And Mother Ayahuasca often takes the form of a serpent, sometimes takes the form of a jaguar, sometimes takes, not a motor car, but Puma, and sometimes takes the form of a human being.
Is there any fear?
The message was, no, I didn't feel fear. I felt enormously
wrapping around.
No, I felt enormously comforted. And again, I got a message that I've had many times, is that you won't be good at giving love to others if you don't love yourself. If you're constantly hating yourself. And I've gone through long periods of my life where I have felt very negative about myself. So that was a positive experience for me. I would say every experience I've had with ayahuasca has been positive, even the most challenging ones.
Yeah, what was the toughest?
The toughest experience I hesitate to share this. In ayahuasca group, when you're drinking with, say, a dozen other people, there becomes an element of telepathy or communication that can take place. And it happened that I was in one group where it turned out later, we got the facts later, that was one individual who shouldn't have been there. In ayahuasca, there's a tendency for you to lower your barriers. Your heart opens. You're very vulnerable to other people. And unfortunately, and this is a phenomenon that I would warn anybody of who's drinking ayahuasca in the West today, or anywhere as a matter of fact, is that there are people who are using that vulnerability to gain psychic advantage over you. And it was the feeling, first of all, it happened to my wife, Santa, who was beside me, and then it happened to me, an individual trying to enter our heads and take control of us. And we learned more about him the following day, and it turned out he'd been there the year before and done exactly the same thing. He seemed to have developed some sort of psychic power. And when we questioned him about it, he said, I'm this basement shaman. I go around ayahuasca groups because I benefit from them. And what he meant by benefiting from them was, I'm a psychic vampire. I draw people's energy. I take it away from them. So these dangers can occur, and that's where a good shaman will stop that happening.
How did the ayahuasca do?
In this case, he did not do anything. It was most unhelpful. But I think he's learned greatly from that experience.
But how does the ayahuasquero know that is happening?
Well, that's something where you have to tell them. And in this case, my wife Sandra did tell the ayahuasquero, but he did not.
He said, this person is trying to enter my mind.
Yeah.
They're trying to face with me.
And there's a natural tendency to assume you're making that up as well.
And you're lucid in that moment. You're lucid enough to describe what's happening.
Yes. You can often be lucid during an ayahuasca journey.
You're speaking English to that person.
You can be.
And the person who is entering the mind, is he sitting in another area? Is he hovering over you?
He was on a bed, not a bed, a mat on the floor, just 2 or 3 people away from us. And we were not the only people who he affected. He affected other people in that room. And there was a gentleman in that room who literally fell down the stairs from the ceremonial space downstairs trying to get away from him. It really got very, very, very dark.
Did everyone confront him?
I think I described it in a lengthy article on my website. Yes, 2 days later he was asked to leave because he kind of said, I do this. I benefit from the energy of others.
And then what type of energy is he getting? Like, how is he benefiting?
Yeah.
In the case, I can tell you particularly in the case of my wife. My wife, Santa, and I are both the same age. She's 73 next birthday as well. But Santa looks a lot younger. I look but Santa looks a lot younger, and he focused on her. He homed in on her when he asked her age, and she told him his age, and he said, "You're that young," and that's when he focused in on her. It was like she had some energy. And she does. That was energizing her, and that was making her a fantastic grandmother, a fantastic mother, and the most wonderful wife on the planet Earth. But she has that energy within her.
Tried to absorb
He wanted that energy. He wanted that energy. And she got no, he did not. What he did was, at a certain point, when we were gathering to drink the brew, he put his arms on her shoulder and blew in her face, like that. Now, in Amazonian shamanism, the breath can be used for different purposes, and one of the purposes can be used for attack. So they fire things called virotes, psychic darts, at other individuals. Again, only people who've worked with ayahuasca will really get this, and a lot of your audience will not get this, and they'll think I'm a lunatic. But I've just reported to you what happened, not only was she psychically damaged by this attack, but she also became physically ill after the attack. She developed shingles. She still has shingles as a result of that, would crop up again and again on her back in exactly the place that one of his hands touched her. Wow. So it's just
okay, this is great. Hold on. So there's a physical manifestation of an emotional and spiritual experience that she had. So if that can happen within your body, why can it not happen within anybody else's body? Why can it not happen outside of our body?
Well, I think it depends on how much you've lowered your guard. We're all on guard, we all defend ourselves psychically as well as physically. But this is the danger of the ayahuasca state, that your heart opens.
So maybe there's an argument to be made for, let's say that there was this war on drugs, right? Maybe they saw it as something that was too vulnerable to be handed out to the masses without a way to, if we're giving them the best case scenario.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think that we want to treat the theys, whoever the people in charge is, with best case scenario. But this is a very vulnerable situation. You use people, you're seeing a perfect example of somebody using it for nefarious intent.
Yeah.
Imagine the average person doing it on a Friday.
I spoke to a psychologist that does psychedelic therapy, and he even reported in a clinical trial these telepathic sort of revelations. That even in a clinical trial inside like an actual medical room, there was a person on, I think, high-dose ketamine or high-dose psilocybin, I can't remember, and the clinician that was observing them basically thought about their dog at home. This is a purely anecdotal example, but thinking about their dog at home, like, oh, did I go let the dog out? And then the patient that was on high-dose ketamine took the shirt off, took off the headphones and said, "This is your dog," or whatever, and was sharing exactly the situation that they were thinking, even though only one of them was on high-dose psychedelic.
Okay, so here we go.
Surprisingly common.
Real quick, right? How do you build the pyramids? How do you organize 20,000 people, 30,000 people to be all on the same page and to live little blocks in the exact same ways and cut them in the exact same shapes, and, well, maybe not the exact same shapes, but to certain specifications.
And you end up with this perfect thing that weighs 6 million tons and is almost perfectly oriented to true north, and is 481 feet high, and contains 2.5 million individual blocks of stone.
And the slightest tweak or the slightest miscalculation can turn the entire thing off, and it won't even be able to stand
You end up in a
itself.
corkscrew instead of a pyramid. You make the slightest error down at the base.
If you could find a way to, I don't want to even say manipulate, but access that sort of telepathic ability, it's just a better communication tool for a project of this size.
Yes, and let's not forget that there are other tele-abilities, such as telekinesis, which are also sneered at by Western science. Because we do everything, well, it's not so much a matter of belief. We do everything in our society through mechanical advantage. We're used to leverage, we're used to machines, which do stuff. We look at cranes for building, so on and so forth. It may be that there are innate human abilities that we're not, that have actually lapsed in our society, but that are still there. And this is where, again, to those who sneer at such ideas, I would say take a close look at the work of Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake is a scientist, and he's done a great deal of work on telepathy. For example, this may sound trivial, but dogs who know when their owners are coming home. Now, he did randomized trials where the owners would come home at very different times, and other issues like scent and so on were excluded. They always knew when their owner was coming home. Not always, but at a statistically significant level. Telephone telepathy. We've all had that experience, I suspect, where the phone rings and you actually know who's on the other end.
How often does a woman make a part of your body rise without even touching it? That's
interesting observation.
That's the most...
That's telepathy too.
You're talking about Homo erectus. Oh, yeah, Homo erectus. Yeah. My favorite type of human.
What I would say is that in all my books, in the thousands of pages that I've written, I have probably written no more than 2 or 3 pages on these extraordinary possibilities and extraordinary abilities. But when archaeologists attack me,
They say Hancock believes in levitation by the mind.
You're in a really peculiar situation because it seems like you're unbelievably passionate about this specific, I guess part of your life, right? Yeah. But writing about it, even speaking on it, I even can tell, Adam, we're talking about it right now, you're like, people are going to use this to discredit this other thing that I've dedicated my entire fucking life to. Yeah. Oh, man, what a tricky situation. It is a tricky,
but we don't do it to other people. All right, like we don't look at Wozniak and be like, your computers aren't good. Right?
No.
You should have just invented Apple.
That's because there's a narrative about the past which archaeology tells, and it's supposed to be a pretty much straight line evolutionary story.
It's much easier to digest like that. Yeah.
Through early agriculture to advanced industrialized societies, and the notion that there might have been a lost civilization and we might have forgotten the whole episode from the human story is very threatening to that narrative. And it's particularly threatening when it appears on a major platform like Netflix. Yeah. I've always been attacked for my work since I published Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995, but the level of the attacks and the characters ramped up enormously since the Netflix series.
Yeah, it's also sorry to cut you, but it's not like it's like a validation. It's like Netflix putting the stamp on this makes people go, oh, this must be true. Right.
It's on YouTube, it's like, oh, that's that guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Whereas I try to make clear throughout the series that I'm expressing my personal views, and that I don't claim to be 100%. I'm not saying this is how it was. I'm saying this is how it could have been. There's a difference.
There's a part of this, and I want to get back to just because I'm really fascinated about this. But there's one part of the Netflix series that I actually was really excited to talk to you in person, so you could explain to me when you were talking about the difference in the color of the bedrock. I think you were in Mexico, was it?
New Mexico.
Oh, it was New Mexico.
We were at.
There was like a line.
Yes, that's the Younger Dryas boundary, and it was at Murray Springs in New Mexico or Arizona. Pretty certain it's New Mexico. It was at Murray Springs. I was with one of the scientists from the Comet Research Group, Dr. Alan West. And he was showing me the Younger Dryas boundary. Well, it's about the width of a human hand, and you see it running all the way through this draw. Now, we see it at all because there was a flash flood which cut the draw down, and the sides are exposed. It was always there, but you wouldn't know it was there unless the land had been cut and opened up as it was. Yeah. And this Younger Dryas boundary contains charcoal from wildfires. And wildfires are what you expect when you have a bit of a comet air bursting up above you. It has platinum, which is very rare on planet Earth. It has iridium, which is even rarer. Yeah, there's the Younger Dryas boundary at Murray Springs. There it is. It contains shocked quartz, evidence of quartz that's been melted at temperatures of more than 2,000 degrees centigrade. It contains carbon microspherules. Yeah, they call it the black mat. It's not only found there, it's found all around the world. It's found in Belgium. It's found in America. It's found as far east as Abu Huraira in Syria. This was a global event. And it wasn't one object hitting one place. Comets have a habit of breaking up into multiple fragments. Excuse me. Some may be quite small, so small that they don't reach the Earth. They blow up in the sky. The most recent example we've had is the Tunguska event. June 30th, 1908. Yeah, right. And that was in Siberia, and it was fortunately over an uninhabited area of Siberia. They calculate that object was maybe 60 to 100 meters in diameter. Yeah. It did not reach the Earth. It blew up in the sky, therefore there's no crater, but it flattened 2,000 there, the flattened trees. 2,000 square kilometers of trees were just flattened.
And they're flattened by air?
Yes, the massive pressure releases. This thing, it's like an atomic bomb going off in the sky. Massive pressure release.
Oh, so instead of the mushroom cloud going up, the mushroom cloud is pointing down at Earth. Gotcha.
If this happened over any city, it would wipe out the entire population of that city.
Right. And still nothing has grown?
I'm not sure. I think it's probably regrown. These areas regrown. The one on the right is Tunguska. I'm not sure because I've not been to that far in Siberia. But it's interesting because it was the 30th of June 1908, which is the peak of the meteor shower known as the Beta Taurus. We have
the Earth has a relationship with the Taurus meteor stream. Yeah. We pass through it twice a year. And the astronomers who are working on the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis are pretty certain that the progenitor comet of the Taurus meteor stream was what caused those impacts 12,800 years ago. And we're still in relationship with it. The comet Enki is the best known bit of the Taurus meteor stream. It's about 6 kilometers in diameter, but it's a fragment of an originally much larger, maybe 100-kilometer diameter core that broke up into multiple pieces. And many of those pieces hit the Earth or airbursted around 12,800 years ago and caused the onset of the Younger Dryas. I'm not saying that as a fact, I'm saying that is the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, documented in probably 100 scientific papers.
Can you bring up that image that you sent me about the asteroids or the comets that have hit Earth? Yeah. Mark sent me this picture. I believe it was you, Mark, that sent me it. And it was, these are the, he sent me this picture. And here are the comets that have hit Earth. And I just looked at it, and I thought this was,
doesn't it?
but wait, and I thought this was throughout history. This has been 94?
Right.
1994?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the universe is telling us to wake up.
Rogan said, we exist in a shooting, we live in a shooting gallery. Yeah. It's a matter of time.
It's absolutely a matter of time. And particular attention needs to be paid to the Taurus meteor stream.
Because we
go through it twice a year.
No matter
we go
what,
through it in late October, early November, and we go through it in late June, early July. And it's 30 million kilometers wide. It takes 12 plus days for the Earth to pass through it on its orbit. Yeah. There are large objects in it. There are many small and harmless objects in it. Yeah. It's only a matter of time before we go and do it right now. Have an encounter. Yeah, before we have an encounter.
And to clarify, some of those are actually just asteroids that explode, I guess, in the Earth's atmosphere. So it's not
the vast majority do. Sometimes they'll hit. Sometimes there have been recent cases of a bit of an asteroid or comet that's hit a house.
Really?
Yeah, there have been 2 recent cases this year.
Yeah, there was one in Alabama that was hit by a large asteroid that left a bruise on her leg. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
They do make it to Earth sometimes.
Somebody throwing around.
The vast majority are airbursts, but they shooting stars, but they do make it to Earth. So we are in a cosmic shooting gallery, and attention needs to be paid to it, and not because we have to live in fear of gloom and doom and our planet is going to be destroyed, precisely because we have the ability and the technology now to do something about it.
Yeah.
If we pay attention to it, rather than paying attention to all the shit we are paying attention to, like making war on each other and investing vast quantities of weapons systems to kill one another on a scale. Yeah. This is the human race has got its priorities wrong. We're still locked in a frame of mind, a state of consciousness that is not serving the human race anymore.
It's based on scarcity.
Scare. It's hatred and fear and suspicion. Yeah. The media are particularly good at that, and spreading that because it gets audiences. But it's so unhelpful, when we should be spreading love and confidence and hope.
So how do we allow people to experiment with mind-altering drugs without it being abused? My concern when weed became legal was that it was going to be immediately abused, and not in terms of the quantity used, the potency of it. Like the weed now, it's not even reminiscent of weed, I feel like, right? It's like this is, if we're actually trying to get to like the natural part of it.
I bought some New York edibles last night. Well, first of all, it's little pieces of chocolate, and each one contains 25 milligrams of THC.
Why would you need 25?
They're tiny. Well, it depends how much you use it. If I use cannabis very regularly, which I sometimes do,
right,
and I really want to get seriously stoned, I might need 40 milligrams.
Really?
And I felt in need of more than 25 milligrams last night for various reasons. But trying to slice that second piece up with a plastic knife wasn't very. And I think I just possibly had a little bit too much.
Also,
very potent.
Apparently heat activates the THC in a different way. Is that right? When it's baked versus when you smoke it.
Interesting. I mean, edibles, of course, as we know, you're looking at 5 or 6 hours. Certainly, on edibles, I peak after about 2.5 hours, and I'm still in there 2 or 3 hours later. Whereas vapes, if I'm writing, I prefer to vape cannabis because I can
titrate the dose. I can keep myself just at the place I want to be without falling deep into.
Yeah, where you can't even write anymore.
Yeah, where I can't write anymore.
Yeah.
So the uses. There are different uses and purposes.
So how do we do that with the
first of all, you legalize everything because the hasty and careless and irresponsible use of these substances is largely happening because of the illegal regime, and there are people making money out of pushing and selling these things as drugs. The first thing to do is to make them all legal. And I think but legal for adults, not legal for children. It would be much easier to explain to, our teenage son or our teenage daughter that we would like him or her to hang on until they're 21, because when you're 21, you can do whatever you like, just like everything else in our society, as long as you don't do harm to others. As I often point out, we have multiple laws already which completely govern every issue of doing harm to others. What's bizarre about the war on drugs is that they govern what we may or may not experience in our own consciousness while doing no harm to others. I think it'd be much easier to explain to a teenager who's keen to get started, this is very serious matter. Take your time. The time will come. Your mind is a little immature at the moment. Wait until you're 21, and then it's your choice.
Do you think 21? Would it be even later, maybe?
I think because we allow so many other things to 21-year-olds, I think that would be a natural age to put on it. Of course, every individual varies. Some 18-year-olds are very mature mentally, some are not. It depends. But if we're going to put something on it, I would say 21 is a good age. The best example of why good advice works better than illegalization is tobacco. In the sense that tobacco has never been legal, it's never been illegal, it's never been a criminal offense that could put you in prison and ruin your reputation for life and make you unemployable to smoke a cigarette. Right. But as it happens, we have seen a huge decline in cigarette consumption, not because people are afraid of getting locked up, but because they've had good advice and they've believed it. And I think we can do that with psychedelics, but the whole thing is tainted by the war on drugs at the moment. We need to get outside.
Go out.
You don't think it should be like off Akash's comment? You don't think it should be a little bit later when our brain is fully developed?
Yes, that's perhaps it should. Okay, I'll tell my personal story. My first ever experience with psychedelics was when I was 24 years old, and that was in 1974 at the Windsor Free Festival in just outside of London, when I split a tab of acid 3 ways with a couple of friends. Had the most amazing experience ever, but I saw one of my friends had a really bad experience, and I actually didn't go back to psychedelics until I was researching the specific book in which I write about psychedelics, which is called Supernatural. It's recently been republished as Visionary. I believe strongly.
How old were you then? Sorry.
So 2003. So I was already 53.
Wow. Okay.
Between the age of 24 and the age of 53, I had no psychedelic experiences at all. I also did not consume cannabis as a young adult. I was 38 when I started cannabis.
Yeah, same, 38 actually.
And I initially found that it was something that I would have of an evening to help me get off to sleep. But when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, and here my critics are going to say that's why he wrote that book. When I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, I decided to experiment with basically smoking all day, which I switched to vaping. It relieves the physical boredom of sitting in a chair for hours and hours every day.
Yeah.
And I feel it helps me loosen up connections in my mind. It doesn't work the same for everybody. I don't get dreamy or dopey or lose connection. I stay focused. So I was 53 when Santha and I went down to the Amazon and had our first ayahuasca experiences in 2003, and I was 38 when I started to become acquainted with cannabis properly. Yeah. So I don't know. The problem is people are different. I think the key thing is let's stop making it illegal. Let's stop making it a crime. Let's stop shaming people because they're interested in psychedelics and ruining their lives. And then let's see what the best system we have. But this is where we need to sit at the feet of shamans in hunter-gatherer societies and learn from them how to handle these powerful experiences, which we're not. And I feel strongly, but I'm not in a position to tell other people what to do. I can only share my advice. These medicines are not for recreational purposes.
Yeah. psychedelics.
And can you
MDMA, now that's a different matter.
Did you see the white supremacist that actually had like a moral revelation on a high-dose MDMA clinical trial?
Oh yeah, you couldn't believe that.
Yeah, I shared it. Basically, he was in a clinical trial to study MDMA's effects on something completely unrelated to race relations. He happened to be affiliated with white nationalist groups. He was at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. Had been involved throughout a long period of time. Was fired from his job after his job found out that he was affiliated with these white nationalist groups. He happened to enroll in the trial, did the study, and as he left the study, he basically elected to discontinue and said, I have to go do some work. Look up my name, you'll see my history, and you'll see why I have to leave. And then basically re-engaged with the researchers again to say, I was a white supremacist, and through this chemical that gave me dramatic empathy, I now understood why I was in such a hateful place, and I just needed love in the first place.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is
that guy's racist though. Like if you gotta be on Molly to like black people, bro, you are racist.
Now, obviously, not everyone has this experience, but it is interesting.
You know, human beings are filled with all kinds of prejudices, and all kinds of ideas about other human beings, and one of the great things about psychedelics is they can shake that up. They can shake it up and get us out of these fixed patterns. But the question of legalization is complicated. I'm against bureaucracies. I'm against government. I think governments are the most unhelpful things in the world today, next perhaps to the mainstream religions. I think they're causing so much misery and chaos. If you're in government, it's in your interests to maximize the negative light in which you put any kind of opposition. That's what politicians do, and it happens at an international level where one state takes on another
exchange of ideas. There's
no exchange of ideas. And
collaboration.
You know, it would be a thoroughly good idea if every leader of every country, anybody running for political office, were required to have a dozen sessions of ayahuasca.
That would be the prerequisite.
Yeah, that's the prerequisite. You don't apply for the job if you haven't done this. This is the bar. You have to have a dozen sessions of ayahuasca, and then you can apply.
Yeah. If you just gave the alt-right Molly, that would probably help a lot.
What is a Molly?
Molly is MDMA.
Oh, it's MDMA. It's also called ecstasy. Right?
Ecstasy. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, we've had some.
This experience I had with MDMA was my first real experience.
Okay, so when you first try it, you've never had it before. You are familiar with.
It's not quite true. I had it once at Burning Man.
Oh, dude, you go to Burning Man?
Yeah, years
ago. When did you go?
Sometime in the 2000s and maybe 2007, somewhere. I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
We go.
I was with Santa.
This is great.
But Santa at that time didn't want to take the MDMA, and I did, and I took it, and we got into a bit of a state about it because I felt she should be in there.
Yeah.
All the wrong things I was thinking, as usual.
Of course.
But I didn't thoroughly enjoy that experience. But this one that I had more recently, where Santa and I took it together before we took the 5-MeO, was just beautiful.
There's a pill called it, and it is an ecstasy pill. So it's got MDMA, but it also probably has some like coke and some other stuff in there, whatever. But it's probably the most amazing feeling I've ever had in my life. Like, I mean, it was at Burning Man, and we had a third of it. We were just sharing it, and it was, don't get me wrong, at Burning Man, you're already filled, you've already filled with so much love and appreciation, and like,
fabulous experience.
Your walls are down, and it's like everybody around you is also giving so much, so it puts you in this great giving state, but it enhanced it, and I don't know.
How long were you in the state?
I mean, it was several hours, but what was really interesting about it was the music that I was listening to. I don't even know if this is possible, what I'm going to explain, but let's just say. Okay. The music that I was listening to while I was in the state kind of captured the state. And when I would listen to that music afterwards, it would like trigger that emotional state for months. Wow. Now it stopped. But for the next few months, just hearing the music gave me a little bit of those feelings. It was a fraction of what those feelings actually were. And something was happening in here. It was like Pavlovian. Like I heard that. We were listening. There's this great DJ Blondish that we were listening to, and all these things kind of came together.
They're all connected together in your mind in some way. Flashback experience. Why would we seek to deny adults the right to have these experiences? I mean, well, what's the sense of it?
I just.
What would you say worst case scenario? Like if we were making the argument for worst case scenario, what would it be?
I think that we have the worst case scenario right now,
which is not giving them the opportunity.
Not giving the if you take that opportunity, you're breaking a law and you're running a risk, and people got the right to break down your door and ruin your reputation. That's the worst. We're already in the worst case scenario.
Fair.
So anything can be better than that.
I just don't want people to. I want people to try these things, and like it was great. Obviously, going with these guys in different times to Burning Man and like having them experience this amazing, I don't want to call it a festival or party.
Yeah.
Like this amazing communal experience, right? Like it was really awesome. I also know that there's somebody who is bored out of their mind in a place that has very little opportunity, and they don't know what they're going to do with their life, and they're probably taking meth out of boredom, and I don't want them to be able to take meth. I'd maybe rather them take this other stuff. So, like, I know worst case scenario in that regard, not in terms of what you've obviously been through and what so many other people have been through. So, as much as I just want to open up the floodgates, I still want to pack them with enough
information.
So it just doesn't get abused.
The important thing to realize is the floodgates are already open. If somebody wants to have that